Welcome to this special Halloween episode of the Average Joe's Movie Clubcast. This is Justin.
I'm Joey.
And all month we have been in the Halloween spirit, watching nothing but horror movies. At least I have. I'm pretty sure Joey did too. And tonight...
That's all I did too, man.
Very nice. And tonight we'll be counting them all down in our huge rank list, talking about all the chilling movies that we watched, some that we liked, some that didn't like so much. And our main feature tonight will be one that we both watched, John Carpenter's classic slasher film, Halloween, from 1978. Just a heads up, we do discuss all our movies and full thoughts on all the movies, so there's some spoilers. Tonight, we're going to be pretty much just skimming the surface on each of these, so hopefully we won't... spoilers won't be aplenty, at least in the main flock of movies. Definitely in Halloween, but I don't really think there's much to spoil in Halloween. Michael Myers kills people. Anyways, if you want to be a part of the movie club, just make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to be alerted to when our podcast episodes come out. And we also have some gaming content and some unboxing content. So yeah, the channel's doing all kinds of stuff. So we're kind of feeling out what's cool, what's new. I know your Mean Girls video got quite a few hits, right?
Yes, well, I mean, I did put it out on October 3rd. That was the only non-Halloween movie I watched this month was Mean Girls, but I mean, October 3rd is kind of Mean Girls Day, so I kind of let that one slide. So, and speaking of unboxing, I am planning to do a special unboxing Friday. So
Okay.
I don't know what all is I know one specific thing that will be in it, and there may be a couple of other things in it too. So it'll be the first one that might have more than one item in it. So
Now, are you a fan of unboxing videos in general? Have you taken inspiration, or has this all been something out of your own mind?
I mean, I've seen some unboxing videos from some different people that were kind of fun. Like nothing recently, but it was something that I used to watch back in the day. So it was just something I thought would be cool to do. Just I got this cool thing. Let me unbox it. It'll be real cool, especially since most of the stuff I'm getting that I would unbox is movie related. So I just figured it'd be something cool to have some extra content on the channel and show some people some cool stuff and what have you.
Yeah, there was this one YouTube couple that I follow. I still follow. I'm still part of their Facebook group. I think it's called Talk Movies With Us. But I remember coming across their Steelbook collection many moons ago, and I watched their unboxing videos for the longest time. They still do it every now and then. So yeah, we are getting way, way off topic. The topic of tonight is horror. So let's get back to it. So yeah, with this being the season of ghouls, Joey, could you, how is your Halloween season going?
So far so good. Just watching a lot of horror movies and working to be honest with you. Gonna watch some more movies tomorrow night with some friends since my party got canceled. Well, not my party, but the party I was gonna go to got canceled, and then that's really it. Nothing crazy or anything of that nature, but.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some good weather. My wife was saying that we might get some rain, so that would be kind of a dour. My kids are dressing up as the Mario Brothers, and the little one's going to be Yoshi, so that'll be cute. The last second, I was like, man, I should have ordered a King Koopa shirt or a Warrior shirt, and the wifey could have wore like a Princess Peach shirt, but Amazon wasn't going to get that to us in time, so
check your GameStop. They probably have something that's
Okay.
Mario related. I'm trying to think at my store right now, and I can't think of anything specific, but I mean that's a good place to check, and Walmart usually has a bunch of that kind of stuff too. So
I know last time we actually did a dress up, my son was Superman, so I got a Batman shirt and my wife wore a Wonder Woman shirt, although I went shopping at Hot Topic and their sizes are more geared towards teenagers, so didn't have quite the best luck there.
that's fair, yeah.
So yeah, we had an interesting night last night. We're big pumpkin carvers. We don't actually decorate like the outside of our house very much, but yeah, we're into going to the pumpkin patch here in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. They have a nice pumpkin patch slash corn maze area, which was a lot of fun. We did that last weekend, although it was way too hot. For being fall. South Carolina is so funky when it comes to fall weather. One day it's crisp and beautiful, and the next day you're sweating. So you never know what you're going to get. But yeah, we ended up with 7 pumpkins. Well, seven that we carved. I think we have a couple small ones that we didn't carve. But yeah, we did a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern-a-thon last night. I did a kind of an interesting new design. I wanted to do red rum on a pumpkin from The Shining, and I had not sure if you know what a Dremel tool is, but it's kind of something you generally work with wood on it, and you kind of like shave things down. It's kind of like a sanding tool, carving tool, and so in some areas of the red rum, like I didn't cut like all the way through the pumpkin. I just kind of shaved down on it, so it has more of like this like sliced up look to it. The only thing I don't like about it is I kind of made it a little too big to where it like wraps all the way around the pumpkin, so you can't like read it from the front. You have to kind of like follow it along. But overall, I think it came out pretty good. Do you do any pumpkin carving?
I haven't done any in quite some time, unfortunately. It's probably been, wow, it's probably like 10 years, the last 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because my daughter hadn't been born. I think, yeah, I don't think she was born yet. It was probably like right before she was conceived, probably. So yeah,
Okay.
now but I saw some pictures where like her and her mom and her brother and her stepdad and some of their friends up in where they lived did some of that stuff. They did some of that. So, but
Uh,
that's I think it's more of kind of like family thing. So we don't really have anywhere to put it. We're gonna just sit it out in front of our apartment. I don't think that's really you know
Yeah,
a
speaking
thing.
of
So
that, a couple years ago when we first became homeowners, I think we bought like 3 pumpkins or something from a pumpkin patch, and we just kind of like set them outside. And inevitably, the neighborhood teenagers came by and stole the pumpkins and smashed them all up the road. And so, yeah, we've learned with pumpkin carving, you definitely don't carve until like at least a couple days before Halloween, or else they're going to go rotten, and don't leave them outside because they're probably going to get smashed. Um, so yeah. Um,
so you would say that they're a 1990s alternative band?
oh, the Smashing Pumpkins, very nice. It's a great. Love that CD. The one with a bullet with butterfly wings. Yeah, that was my jam back
Yes,
in middle school, high
the
school.
world is a vampire.
That's right. Speaking of vampires, oh, not really. That's a really bad segue. I didn't know where I was going with that. Yeah, let's. I guess we can. Oh, I guess I started a new tradition last night with carving pumpkins. We put on Coraline, which is a really good gothic kids film, and so I had that playing in the background while we were carving. You ever seen Coraline before?
I have not seen Coraline. That is one I'm not. I mean, I know I know of the movie, but it's not one I'm familiar with. 'Cause, I mean, it's in that same vein of like Frank and Weenie and all of those, right?
It's made by Leica Studios. So their first one was Coraline, which is this gothic story, kind of stop motion animation slash digital. They also did Paranorman, which is great. Those are the 2 ones I would definitely recommend. They also did the Box Trolls and Kubo and the Two Strings. All those movies I would highly recommend. Frank and Weenie, I think that was done by Disney. That was a Tim Burton thing. So kind of the same look. These all kind of have that Burton feel, from his original Nightmare Before Christmas kind of vibe when it comes to family gothic entertainment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, man. All right, so let's get back to it. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about our history with horror movies. For me, it's a little unconventional. How about you? Have you been an avid horror watcher ever since you left the womb, or did it take you a while to get into them?
I would definitely say mine's also unconventional. So I remember kind of growing up, and I kind of always thought horror movies were kind of stupid. So there's a reason, and we're going to get into. I guess we'll get into it a little bit later. Why my favorite horror movie is what it is, and it is. Well, I watched it during this month, so we'll talk about that. Always, especially slasher movies, I kind of always thought they were stupid. They were super predictable, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized that going through and watching some of the ones I watched, I was like, I thought I had seen these movies, or I had never seen some of the OG ones. I'd seen some of the sequels. Maybe that's some of the problem, because some of the sequels are super stupid. But I definitely, as I've gotten older, especially in the last couple of years, I've watched a lot of different horror movies, especially from like Korea and some other places that are really good, and different stuff. So I've watched a lot of like J horror movies and K horror movies that I've enjoyed, and different things of that nature. I've started to enjoy the genre a lot more than I did when I was younger. So.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see here. So a lot of like traditional horror movies I didn't really watch until actually recently. My dad had like a few favorites. Like he was a big fan of The Exorcist, so I watched that at a real young age. So at a young age, I kind of had the impression that horror movies were supposed to be like real scary. And it wasn't until his last couple years when I watched some of these classic slashers that a lot of people are into horror, are kind of into like fun horror and not so much scary horror. So it's interesting because you'll hear about reviews come in for a movie like Hereditary or The Witch, and like they're really weird and artsy and they really get under your skin, and I just love that stuff. I love it when something really kind of creeps me out, where I think a lot of horror fans are looking for more of like, haha, it's silly, he got cut up, that's ridiculous, or whatever, like real harmless horror, I guess I would describe it as. It's funny. My sister's really into ghost movies, and I've shown her a few things. Like we watched Suspiria a few weeks ago, and that I mean, people getting like murdered or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to see this," and she only wants to see creepy ghosts in movies. So it's interesting how people definitely have their like subsections of horror that they are drawn to the most. Would you say there's a subgenre within horror that you're most a fan of?
It really just depends. Like I definitely, for the most part, with a few exceptions, like I think I dislike horror comedy.
Yeah. Based on your ratings, I would agree.
But with that being said, like I love The Babysitter and I love Zombieland. Like absolutely love both of those movies. And then like one of the movies I'll talk about later is Mayhem, which was an action horror comedy, which I also loved.
Nice.
But I mean, based off of a couple ones I've watched, I just talked about how I grew up not really liking slashers, but I think a slasher movie is done right. Would probably be my favorite genre. That or like another one that I watched I really enjoyed was a K revenge movie that we'll talk about in a bit. So like revenge horror, but revenge is my favorite genre of movie, period. So if you can make that a horror movie, then I'm in. So
I guess I would say I'm most into like exorcism / ghost movies. Like whenever I got into Paranormal Activity a few years ago, and that kind of reinvigorated my interest in horror movies. Typically throughout the year, I don't really get into a lot of horror. I kind of really like October because it gives me this excuse to go back and watch movies like Hellraiser and crazy stuff like that, because I've really never been exposed to it. My oldest son is actually a horror fanatic. I started him off with Gremlins, and I probably showed him a few things he shouldn't be watching. And he's kind of pushed me to watch a few different horror franchises that I probably wouldn't have watched otherwise. I've seen every single Critters movie, and some of them better than others, but I have that on my letterbox now. My dad was a big fan of Alien, so I guess I could add that to some of the original horror movies. A lot of the newer ones that get a lot of hype, Like I saw Parasite this year already. That was great. Was a big fan of Ari Aster's films, Hereditary and Midsummer. So I do see some horror stuff out of the season, but the majority of it does fall where I try to cram as much in during this time of the year. I'm really annoyed though, because I heard the director of The Witch came out with a new movie with Robert Pattinson and I think it's William Dafoe's in it, called The Lighthouse. Have you heard of this movie?
I feel like I have heard of that movie. Yeah,
It was
yeah, I feel
supposed
like
to
I've
be
heard of it.
it was supposed to be opening nationwide, but nationwide apparently doesn't mean in South Carolina. So I'm left wondering when the hell that we're going to get it. The end of the year is great because we do get all these kind of Oscar caliber movies, real high art house stuff that came out of Cannes or the Cannes Film Festival. But man, they don't just show. They don't come to theaters around South Carolina, unfortunately.
Or
So
it's all in Columbia.
yeah, South Carolina in general. Man, I wish there would be some kind of like movie company that like would show like these smaller films like streamable. Like I would gladly pay $25 right now to stream The Lighthouse, but otherwise it's totally unavailable. So that really annoys me. Yeah, so I guess I'll see it when I see it.
I guess anything like in a horror genre that is like could be based, that could be realistic. That
Hmm.
definitely messes with me more than anything that's supernatural. So like
What's a good
we'll talk
example of
about,
that?
so like in theory, like the first Saw movie, even though that ends up being torture porn, but it's just a
Uh-huh.
dude. It's just a dude torturing people, or you know, until we get to the end of Halloween, like the first Halloween, just
Hmm.
it's just a dude. Um, or like
Hmm.
when I talk about I Saw the Devil in a little while, when we go through that, like any of those kind of movies where it's just people as opposed to something supernatural like Friday the 13th. Well, I guess the sequels to Friday the 13th or A Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. Um, because those are supernaturals. Like whatever you can, yeah, you can suspend disbelief. And when I was a teenager, I had a hard time doing that because I was like, oh, this is such bullshit. But as I got older, like it's a movie, it's entertainment. You just let yourself kind of go. Um, but yeah, when it's anything that could just be like actual realistic, like this could actually happen, like I find that to be way more terrifying than just some supernatural monster.
That brings up a good topic that I wanted to hit before we moved on. Was I think my most intriguing sub horror genre that I get interested in is how do I describe it? I describe them as my cringeworthy bucket list movies, basically torture slash like just basically like the most awful stuff you can see on screen. And I find I'm like totally fascinated to see if like I hear all this build up to these kind of movies and I'm like, oh, can I take it? And I prep myself and I watch it, and sometimes it's like, oh, this is crazy, but other times it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out my cringeworthy bucket list online. Some additions to that have been like Cannibal Holocaust. My top one is Antichrist. There was a scene in Antichrist from Lars von Trier that, man, that creeped me out for days because mutilations. That's what really gets me, and that's there. There's a new movie tonight that'll be. It's not a new movie, but one I saw for the first time this year that I added to that list. So yeah, when things make you squirm in your seats because it's so unbearable with the craziness on screen. Yeah, those I find those quite intriguing.
Yeah, I have a
But
specific thing that messes with me more than anything,
what's
and
that?
that's with the Achilles tendon. So it
Huh?
doesn't. So I'm sure you've seen Hostel. Um,
It's been a long time, but yeah.
so that came out. Like, I think that's when I was living in Charleston. So that would have been when we were like 21, 20, 21, a long time ago. So there's a scene where they melt the girl's face with the blowtorch. Yeah, didn't phase me. They cut her optical nerve. All the juice comes out. didn't squirm at all. But the scene where like the dude stands up and they slices tendon, like the back of his tendon with like a scalpel or a knife or whatever it was, like
Mm-hmm.
just you can see it, but our viewers like I just. Mm. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a scene in one of the movies. It's in I Saw the Devil. Yeah, they do something similar, and like it was worse than that what they did to his Achilles tendon, and that's the one thing that always gets me is messing with someone's Achilles tendon for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's because I sprained my ankle so much like in gym or something, and it just I don't know it messes with me real bad, more than some of the other stuff I've seen in movies.
Well, you went into detail there, so I guess it's fair enough. Spoilers for Antichrist on the scene that I was talking about. So Charlotte Gainsbourg crushes William Dafoe's junk with a log, and she jacks him off, and he starts coming blood, and yeah, that got under my skin quite a bit. Sorry for the NC-17 content there, but yeah, that's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in a movie. So
All
there
right,
you
well, good
go.
to know for when I watch that movie because that's in my it's in my cringeworthy list that I have. So
Oof. Yeah, I mean, there's some great artsy stuff in there, but that got me. Solo has a few moments in there that also kind of get under my skin, and that's on my list as well. But without further ado, let's dive into these huge lists we have of all the movies we watched this month. And for me, I have 38, and you had 20 some, right?
25. I slammed out four yesterday actually to get to an even 25.
Bam. So I'll do a couple. I'll run off a couple here, and hopefully, eventually, we'll kind of come even with each other. So I'll start off. So my number 38 was the Criterion Collection's Haxan. This is a silent film. It's about like the history of witchcraft. And yes, unfortunately, I have it ranked as the dead last on my list here. And it's kind of because it took me 4 sittings to get all the way through it. I like the first chapter. It kind of like shows like these different like pieces of art that they talk about like witchcraft and like the witch trials in terms of like how they would like throw women in like rivers to see if they would float, and if they floated they'd burn them, so that kind of stuff. So I found that interesting. But oh my gosh, this movie goes on for like an hour and 45 minutes. I think there's different variations on the music, and I think whatever was on the Criterion channel was just the lamest music. It just did not add any creepy atmosphere to all this like witchcraft imagery that I was watching. And in the second half of the movie, there's just so much of these monks just kind of walking around rooms talking about stuff, and it's almost like this like satire on like the church's view of witchcraft. And it just was so dull, and I wanted it to end, and I was like, oh, please end so I can finally say I watched this. And yeah, Haxan was quite the drag for me because of that. There's some cool imagery in there. I mean, there's this cool shot of the devil. I think the director of the film actually plays the devil, and he has this long tongue, and there's these weird like pig people. But some good stuff in there, but overall a painful experience to get all the way through. All right. So next, my number 37, I finally saw Poltergeist 3. Me and my son have been a big fan of these Poltergeist movies. I showed him the first one a few years ago, and that's a bona fide masterpiece, number one. And whenever I was writing my review, I came across the fact that there's a Poltergeist 2 and a Poltergeist 3. And I was like, well, those are probably shit because I've never heard of them. And actually, Poltergeist 2 wasn't too bad. I saw that earlier this year, and it was okay. Poltergeist 3, not so much. So essentially, I think in my Letterboxd review, I said, Part 3 of Poltergeist, Attack of the Mirror Ghosts. The little girl from the original is still in it. It's a real cheap production. It's so forgettable. Like, I'm trying to look at my Letterboxd review to see what I even said. There's a few cool like practical effects moments throughout, but overall, like, the acting is real bad, and like the scares could have been way more effective. Like the shot of the poster like shows this building get electrocuted by lightning, and that doesn't actually happen until like the final shot of the whole movie, where it should have happened in the first shot of the whole movie. For some reason they recycle the villain from part 2, which didn't make any sense because they kind of like dispatched of him in part 2. Poltergeist 3, there's some, I mean, it's kind of a movie where you put it, it's like, oh, I've never seen that before, and watch it with some friends and maybe laugh your way through it. That's about all I can say about that one. And the last one I'll talk about until I throw it to Joey's way was actually I think it was basically my kickoff for Halloween movie season, and I finally watched The Wicker Man, and unfortunately this was disappointing. I knew a lot about the story. I had heard that Midsummer was kind of based. It's this folk horror genre. I knew a lot about like the Nicolas Cage version, but I wanted to see this original version. And gosh, I'm trying to remember this one too. Like it does a good job of really like getting you on the island where this like police investigation is going on. And so this guy is kind of like wandering around this island talking to all these people, and it just kind of goes, and there's some kind of cool like folk horror stuff towards the end, but it's pretty much everything you would expect. Christopher Lee's in there, being like the leader of this like this like cult on an island that's, you know, like believing in these pagan rituals. I mean, look at the poster, and you're not going to get much surprises beyond that. Wicker Man was kind of a drag for me. I guess that's all I have to say about it.
All right, so my first one is a movie. So it's called Blood Mania. Okay. And how I came across this movie is sometimes I'll go. There's a pawn shop that sometimes will have some pretty decent pickup in scores for like $3, and they'll have DVDs for $1. And they had this for $1. It was 16 horror movies, and it was like right before October. And I was like, all right, sure, I'll buy this for $1. I'm sure we'll watch something out of it for October in there. And the one that we were looking through it and didn't know anything about it, was just Blood Mania. So that's the one we decided to watch out of it. And oh my God, was it horrible. It really didn't have hardly any horror in it at all. It felt more like a 70s soap opera. It really should have been called like Titty Mania, and upon during some research we found out that it had an alternate title of Porno Mania. And how I felt about it, if you read my review, or anybody read my review, which you can go and read on Letterboxd, of course, is that I wish I was the pool guy or the pool boy who ran away 5 minutes into the movie when like one of the main girls, she jumps into the pool with him topless and like jumps on him, and he like jumps out of the pool and runs away. And that's how I wish I could have been in that movie, because it was really god awful. Is this one doctor literally just like sleeps with literally anything that has a set of tits and a vagina, and like then his wife sleeps with someone else to try to like get him out of the situation he's in, and then she gets left halfway through the movie. Like they just forget her character. It's bad, like real bad. Yeah, I don't suggest that anybody ever watches it. It's bad, and that's all I have to say about it.
All right. My next one is another one that I watched because it's in the Criterion Collection. I finally checked out the original 50s version of The Blob, and yeah, so that's a sci-fi monster movie from the 50s. It stars Steve McQueen. I thought the effects on this actual blob creature was pretty cool. It'll like cut away and show it oozing through things, and that was pretty nice. But so much of the movie is just like them like, where is the blob? What does the blob do? And it's just, it wastes so much time on that. The end's kind of cool, as it like kind of invades, and then there's kind of this kind of weird way they defeat it at the end. But I guess I don't know what I was expecting for a 50s movie. I guess I was just expecting a little more than that. So The Blob, it was all right. It's definitely a classic worth watching, but with some cool effects. But it's definitely a 50s action. Actually, the best part of it is there's this really like peppy song at the very beginning of it. Let me see if I can pull up the lyrics. It's like, beware of the blob. It creeps, it leaps, it glides, it slides across the floor. So that was probably one of the highlights of the blob. It was all right. I probably should watch like the 80s remake. A movie that I got recommended to, well, actually, it wasn't really recommended to me. Like these guys like I write into this Criterion Creeps podcast weekly, and they said, "Hey, check out Riding the Bullet from Nick Garris, a Stephen King adaptation," and it was almost like a dare, like I dare you to watch this. And this has actually become one of my new favorite, so bad it's good kind of movies. This movie, it's not labeled as a comedy, but it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life, to a hilarious extent. There is so much like unnecessary style in this movie. Like it's flashing back to me now. There'd be like these scenes where this guy walks up to a situation and we see it play out, and it's like, ooh, is it really going to play out like that? And it backs up and it plays out again, and it backs up and it plays out again. And like, so we see like all these different scenarios of, I guess, what the guy's like alternate thoughts on the situation. So all that's pretty ridiculous. There's the gist of this movie is you really got to take life by the, like ride the bull by its horns and take advantage of each day. And it's goodness. It's one of the cheesiest, weirdest ways to do it. So much over the top, hilarious stuff in it. It's definitely worth watching, I think. Just take it with a grain of salt that it's pretty ridiculous. And even the sentimental music that's really manipulative at the end actually got me. Overall, I enjoyed it, especially since it was kind of warned at me instead of recommended. Riding the Bullet, it's something else. And finally, before I throw it back to you, I'll get into a movie that I think we'll probably disagree quite a bit with. And my number 33 is The Phantom Carriage, also in the Criterion Collection. So I didn't have this immediately on my radar this season, but I saw that you gave it a shining 5-star review. And that's very rare for Joey to give such glowing reviews. So like, oh man, I got to check that out. And what do I say? I guess when I first came into my Letterboxd review for this movie, I was like, okay, let me get this out there now. The effects on death are fantastic, especially for the era. I think this was made in the 20s. But other than that, the story, I was not into it at all. It goes on and on and on about this shitty guy's like redemption. And actually, one of the highlights of the movie is, and I'm kind of surprised you didn't put it in your review, is did you notice the what Stanley Kubrick probably brought to The Shining from this movie? There's a scene towards the end where the guy takes like a hatchet and starts hammering this door and like going through this door in the Phantom Carriage. It's like almost exactly like the Jack Nicholson Here's Johnny scene.
I remember pretty much saying "Here's Johnny" while watching that. But any movie in which anybody does anything where they beat a door, break through a door, it doesn't matter. It's just "Here's Johnny."
Yeah, you got to watch that part at least and see the fact that it is extremely like, wow, Kubrick must have watched this movie because it is very, very similar. Gosh, there's that part in that movie where like the nice lady is like hemming up his clothes and he like ruins it, and he's all like doesn't care the fact that he's like getting people around him sick. And generally I don't like to dislike a movie just because I hate certain characters in it, but this one I just was not getting into the story. I thought it had some really cool effects in it, but overall it's just one of those ones that it didn't resonate with me. I can appreciate that. I guess Ingmar Bergman got a lot of inspiration from this, but as a modern viewing, I felt it more as a scholarly work instead of a movie I'd want to sit down and enjoy.
That's fair, and I'll talk about that one a little bit later. So I'm gonna do two because number 24 is In the Mouth of Madness, and I feel like I talked about that one to
Okay.
death on our last podcast. So I'm gonna go to 23, and that
Okay.
is from the Criterion Collection. So both of us have some of those low, and this one is House or House,
Okay.
and
How Sue?
House, yeah. Um, so my roommate, which we talk about a lot, Night Flyer here. Uh, he had been trying to get me to watch this movie for quite some time, and I love Japanese cinema. We've talked about that quite a bit. But this movie did not resonate with me. Generally speaking, and pardon my language, I don't know what the fuck was going on in this movie. Um, like that's pretty much, yeah. I don't really know what's going on. Like I know that there was a woman, like a girl, she lost her pants, she fought in her underwear the whole time, and then they ended up eating a watermelon that was another girl's head. The house was haunted. Like yeah, it's my brain hurts trying to think about this movie. Like that's just yeah, like I mean, it's Japan, man. Like it was Japan in the 70s. There might have been some acid involved. Maybe I needed to be on some acid. I don't know. Like just my brain hurts thinking about it. To be honest. Let's see if I can find what
The movie
I'm
that
pretty.
I've seen House twice now, and when I first watched it, it reminded me a lot of Evil Dead 2, especially when the horror finally does start to kick in. Um, I liked it a lot less the second time because, man, it takes forever to get to the fun, crazy stuff involving the cat at the end.
Oh yeah, and a
Um,
cat. Yeah, I was gonna say in my review I say and a cat. Yeah.
I definitely, if I went into my letterbox review, I definitely had some thoughts about what it's about. It's almost like one of these David Lynch movies where the longer you are from seeing it, like the less like you remember like the meanings like you kind of took away from it. I remember, yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. You have the whole banana part towards the end. It's definitely this ridiculous Japanese horror movie, and I mean, I definitely got some enjoyment out of it the first time I saw it, but unfortunately, it took way too long the second time, so I didn't enjoy it as much. So yeah, I mean, you're not as into the kind of the comical horror, so maybe that's the reason it didn't hit for you.
Yeah. So
Okay,
all right.
few yeah, few. Let's see, what number are you at now?
That was number 23.
Okay. So I'm getting into 32, 31, and 30, and 29, because that one will be easy. Okay, so I watched the Uninvited. That was another Criterion movie. That's at 32. This is said to be like one of the original like ghost movies. And let me think of what, like, it's so funny. A lot of these times, like, I'm sitting there watching these movies, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of a drag, and it's very like old fashioned. And then like whenever I start like writing about it in my review, I say these really nice things about it. But like the actual experience of watching it was not nearly as flowery. There's some really cool elements in this movie. Like there's this really cool like seance scene in The Uninvited. It's essentially about like this brother and sister who get this house really cheap next to the ocean. I think somewhere in the UK, and the guy who sells it to them, their granddaughter, her mother like died in the house, and so like she's being haunted and she's being drawn to the house. I mean, it was pretty good for an old ghost movie. It had some cool moments in it. Nothing I want to rush back to. I'm actually kind of, it's dawning on me now that the higher I get up in this list, I'm not being so negative on things. So yeah, some cool ghostly elements. Towards the end, there's like you can kind of see this ghost being kind of conjured, and that was kind of neat. And there was some cool parts, like there's like this room that's more haunted than the other rooms, and whenever they're standing in there, they actually see these flowers. Well, the audience sees these flowers like wither because they say they have this eerie presence in the room. So a pretty good ghost movie, but a little old fashioned at the same time. I guess that's the fairest way to put it. The next movie I have is another Criterion pick, Carnival of Souls, and unfortunately, I was expecting a lot more Carnival Souls and less girl kind of going out of her mind. I watched this pretty recently. Again, there are some really cool elements in terms of the fact that like she is kind of like this woman on kind of the edge of a nervous breakdown. When I was flipping back through the movie, I noticed there's some really good organ music throughout. There's an interesting twist at the end. It doesn't really make any sense whenever you think back on the context of the whole film. I was just hoping for this one scene where she'd be like wandering through a carnival and seeing a variety of different ghouls, but really it was kind of the same looking ghoul the whole time that was kind of like stalking her and kind of driving her crazy. And there's some really good black and white photography in this, especially when she's like coming into this carnival area. And yeah, they do a really good job of like showing close-ups of her face, and she's kind of freaked out, and she has these wide eyes. So all that was great. It's one of those movies where I think with different expectations coming into it, I probably appreciate it more. I know it's very lauded for being like one of the original independent horror movies. If you ever see Roman Polanski's Repulsion, it kind of has a similar feel in terms of the story with this woman having this breakdown, and it has a similar look as Night of the Living Dead, I would say. And I guess I got two more, and then I'll throw it back to you. I saw The Exorcist 3. I've heard this lauded for a long, long time, and it has some good parts, but at the same time, there's a lot of really, really silly parts in this Exorcist 3 movie. I probably gave it it was one of these movies where I was watching it late at night and I was just absolutely hating it. I was like imagining myself just giving it like a 5-star review on Letterboxd. I was just not into this movie at all. There's this ridiculous moment at the beginning where like these church doors blow open and this statue of Jesus, it's a statue of Jesus, opens its eyes, and you're like, what the fuck am I watching? This is ridiculous. There's some cool stuff towards the end. Like the whole premise of this movie is like the demon from Exorcist 1 like survives somehow and like jumps over to this serial killer. So the demon is able to carry on this wrath of evil by jumping to these different people in order to carry on the legend of this serial killer. The end is just batshit crazy with its exorcist scene. There's a really, really, really good jump scare scene that takes forever to build up to, and it finally happens. And then there's other parts that are just totally ridiculous. So it had some good moments in there, but there's also, I couldn't take it entirely seriously. So it's definitely down a peg from the legend that is the original Exorcist film. And then 29 was Mouth of Madness, and listen to the last episode to hear everything we have to say about that one. Joey.
All right, so I'm gonna hit two because one of them will be very quick.
Okay.
We'll probably both be quick. But so 22 is The Wizard of Gore, which is not a Criterion, but it was on the Criterion channel. And if anybody's ever seen the movie Juno, it is talked about in comparison to the Mouth of Manos, or Manos, the Hands of Fate, is compared to that movie within Juno. So
Okay.
I picked it to watch because of that. It was, it's from 1970, so I took some of the effects into account with that, but man, they're bad. And just the whole kind of premise that a wizard, he's doing a magic show and he kills the people on the stage, but like reanimates them enough or puts an illusion of that they're still alive until later. And it's just bad. It's bad. It was kind of funny, but I don't think it was meant to be funny, or hell, maybe it was. But yeah, so it's down there on my list. And then 21's The Cube, or Cube.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got some bangers coming, friend. So
All right.
but there were things we talked about the cube. I like the cube in some aspects, and then other things I didn't like about it. Um, I mean, fake ass Emma Stone was great, so there's that. Um, I'll kick it back to you so you can catch up to me some more.
All right, I'll be doing 28, 27, 26. First one, this was actually, I think, the first kids horror movie I watched this month. I finally checked out Eddie Murphy's The Haunted Mansion. And this thing gets trashed like everywhere you look most of the time. And it's really not that bad. I think they go a little overboard with the fact that Eddie Murphy is this clueless real estate agent. If you've ever seen I think it came out in 1999 or 2000. It's called like The Haunting or something. It really is similar to that story in terms of this woman being brought to this haunted house and like the ghosts like, oh, you look like, this woman we just, one of our loved ones and we're going to bring you to us. So that's kind of the gist of it. There's some fun aspects to it. The guy from Princess Bride, Inconceivable's in it. There's a little bit of bad CGI. But overall, it was a good time. I mean, Eddie Murphy's pretty funny, even when he's being a little over the top. So, Haunted Mansion, it's a decent time to watch with the family. The next one, I kind of half-watched. It was Child's Play 2. The first time I watched this movie, I was really not into it because I just kind of saw it as kind of a rehash of the original. And kind of rewatching it, like half-watching it, some of it does have a few more like kill scenes in it that does give it a little bit more merit. Actually, the climax of the movie is great because they go to like the doll factory and have a showdown with Chucky in the doll factory, which is pretty cool. But there's some pretty fun parts where Chucky is attacking different victims and stuff. And so the kills in Chucky 2, Child's Play 2, are pretty decent, a lot better than I remembered. I just remembered really being drugged down by the fact that we were going back through this fact that, there's this kid and he says there's an evil doll, but nobody believes him. So that's still there, and that kind of drags it down a little bit for me. But I actually appreciated that movie a lot more on a rewatch. And I finally joined the party, Joey, and I saw It Chapter 2, and it was okay. I really don't understand the fact how the studio couldn't have done a better job making this a more cohesive experience, because It Chapter 2, the only real new thing they bring to the table is the adult element. They kind of do a lot of retrading in terms of like Pennywise and the kids. So all that's like back in there, and we kind of already seen that, which is okay. We enjoy seeing that. If they could have spent a little more effort throwing as many F-bombs into the script and like put that energy in actually making some scary scenes, that probably would have paid dividends. Like the whole like opening, like I'm usually not one to be like, oh, they need to. Okay, so I know Stephen King's original work had like a hate crime in the opening, but this is probably an instance where they could have probably done something else, and it would have been a little bit less like, oh, look at what we're doing. It's a I hate you fag, I'm gonna kill you fag crime thing, and wasn't so into that. I mean, there's some cool Pennywise stuff in there. It's really, really long, and there's some, like, if you really break it down, there's some stuff like the totem stuff that didn't really need to be there. Overall, I mean, it was an enjoyable watch, but I definitely see its faults, and I wish it could have been. I mean, I think if the studio would have, like, I guess, planned for 1 and 2 to definitely happen, like, from the get-go, I think it could have been this cohesive masterpiece. But otherwise, Chapter 2 seems more like a retread than a really worthy. It didn't need to be 3 hours, so.
It probably could have been cut down a good bit in maybe in some places, but they rehashed and filled in some spots that they left out in Chapter 1 with the children, which is what they were doing. What I really liked was that they didn't use the stereotypical "here's the music giving you the jump scare." Like, you knew that there was a jump scare somewhere in this scene, but they didn't tell you, because I mean, they did use jump scares, but and I thought it was, I liked it a lot more than you did, clearly. Which, go figure. But Like I thought that they cast the adults very well. I thought they did very well with the casting on in the
Yeah.
adults and both the children in both of those movies. I thought that was great. But like there was like the scene with Paul Bunyan, and I was like, all right, something's about to go down here, and like
Yeah.
I was braced for it, and I was ready for it, and it
It,
still kind of got me. And then there's the scene near the end where they're in the water, and I'm like, all right, it's coming it's coming. And I'm just like, oh my god, it was just one of those movies where they like the spot where it was supposed to be, it's not there, and then when it's not where it's supposed to be, you just have to like you're always just on edge. So
hmm.
like, I thought they did a great job. Like the length was a problem, but like I knew that going in, so I was prepared for it. It's just one of those things like brother, you have suggested so many long ass movies to me. Like I don't want to hear you say shit about long ass movies.
Yeah,
Anyway,
fair
continue.
enough there. Um, I guess a couple more things about it. Chapter 2. Some of the scares are really really silly, like the naked lady. That didn't do a lot of, and then the Paul Bunyan thing I thought was pretty silly. I think one thing that gets me is the fact that like the level of horror in this is could definitely be like PG-13, like open to younger audiences, but they give it that that hard R because of all like the vulgarity in it. So I think there's kind of a contrast there to where it could easily be more accessible to a wider variety of people, which I know probably doesn't matter to you much, but like me with kids, I mean, kids these days, I mean, they see red balloons and they see like clowns and like Pennywise, Pennywise, Pennywise. I definitely like it'd be nice to share these kind of movies with my kids, but there's just so much vulgarity in there to where it makes me real hesitant. So I got that part leaning on me as well. So I'm a little biased in that realm, which you don't have to quite worry about.
I mean that's fair. Um, and I don't know, like I look at it in the sense, and this is I guess a different kind of take of it is like I have to ID people every day for my job, make sure that they're okay. Hey, is this game okay for for
Mm-hmm.
your 10-year old or your 9-year old to to
Yeah.
buy because it's blood and gore and language. And most parents take a different take. They're like, oh, they hear it in school or they see it in TV or oh, they watch Game of Thrones. And I'm like, yo, why are you letting your 9-year old watch effing Game of Thrones? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or they come in, oh, they turned the language down, so whatever. So I just see a lot of people go, they don't even care about the language, or I see people with their kids and they're into the store in the public and they're just like, hey yo, shut the f up, and I'm like,
Wow.
okay, so I guess it's from what I see interacting with the public, it's language isn't a big deal, but then like the whole thing with Deadpool, it's like this is a hard R movie and people were walking out. It's like, oh, that's what the R rating tells you. Don't go watch this with your kids. So,
And actually,
but
I really actually appreciated that whole Once Upon a Deadpool thing. I didn't show my kids that until that came out, and we had a decent time watching that. And I mean, it was just some all those f bombs cut out, and I didn't have a problem with it. I know, and that's one interesting aspect about horror is or comic book movies. Like a lot of people went like goo goo gaga over Logan because they're like, oh, we finally get a bloody Wolverine, and he's saying curse words and stuff, and I like the gritty stuff. And to me, I don't really think it enhances it all that much. That's definitely a diversion. I haven't really thought about this before diving in, but yeah, that's one thing that bugs me is like, oh, it could be so much better if it was more gritty, more bloody, or whatever. And a lot of times I disagree with that statement.
I mean, it's a different take. Like, gritty, if done right, can be better, but it doesn't just because it's grittier and bloodier doesn't make it better. Like
Mm-hmm.
Logan is far and away the best Wolverine movie, but it's not just because it's gritty and bloody. It's just because all the other ones were really bad.
Yeah.
But that we're tangenting.
All right. So I'm on 25. Do you want to go back to you?
All right, sure. This will be number 20. And I'm probably
Okay.
going to catch a lot of flack that this revered movie is so far down my list. But this is I did by enjoyment, not necessarily by best.
Okay.
So this is going to be number 20. This is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, not the '03 remaster or remake with Jessica Biel. But
Okay. Interesting.
uh, I thought it was really good. And we're talking about we did the 40th anniversary remaster, so it looked really really good. But it still
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about grit, so I guess
Yep.
segue there. It still had all of that original grit and grime that that the movie had. And once the movie got going, it went. It was just balls to the wall the whole time. Um, the main thing that really just really hurt this movie, in my opinion, is like the last 20, 25 minutes of the movie. The one girl just screams the whole movie, like the whole last 20 or 25 minutes, the whole time. Like she does,
Mm-hmm.
all she does is scream, 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 and it just kind of like it
Scream.
just took me out of the movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was a shot within that where they like zoom in like really close on her on her face and her eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and like that was really cool. But it just like that just really took it out of me. But like we're going back to like we were talking earlier about things that could really happen. Like yo, this was just a dude, like just some people who cut people up and like, hey, we got barbecue, and it was humans, and all they did was hit people with a mallet and cut people up with a chainsaw. Like, yeah. Also, never drive off the interstate and down random side roads in like Texas or anywhere. Just
Mm-hmm.
drive on the interstate and you're fine. But yeah, that was my number 20.
Okay, I have that a little bit later on, so I'll reserve my thoughts until then. Number 25 is David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone. I heard a lot of good things about this. This is another Stephen King adaptation. It's probably the least Cronenberg film I've watched, because most Cronenberg films definitely have like the body horror to kind of back it up. And I actually haven't written about this one about on Letterboxd, so but I did watch this the other night. It's basically Christopher Walken, I think, is the actor in it. Yeah. And he gets into this car accident and he goes into a coma for several years. And when he comes to, he can like touch people and see into the future. So I had a pretty cool story. I was really engaged with where it would go. But overall, it kind of had a made for TV kind of feel for it. The end was okay. It was an interesting story. I definitely wouldn't consider this like a horror movie. I guess spoilers, like the dead zone, he was like saying like had to do with like the uncertainty of like if he like manipulated a situation, like there was this like vagueness of how another part would turn out, and I think they referred to that as the dead zone. I'm not sure if you've ever seen The West Wing before with Martin Sheen, but this movie feels like an audition to that because he plays this politician in this one. It's an okay watch. But definitely lower on my list when it comes to Cronenberg. Have you seen, when I say Cronenberg, does that, any movies come to mind?
I feel like, I mean, I know the name, and I feel like we didn't we watch one, or you like as a challenge movie or something.
I don't think we've done a Cronenberg. He did like The Fly and,
Like with Jeff Goldblum.
yep. Yep, that's one of
Yeah, I've
his
seen
most
that.
famous. Okay, Scanners is one of his famous ones. That was pretty good. So yeah, his The Brood is really good. I watched a lot more of his like Criterion picks, but yeah, I snuck a Cronenberg. I feel like I need to watch more Cronenberg and more Carpenter. They definitely make kind of like fun / horror movies that I probably should squeeze into my lineup more often. Yeah, but that's Dead
Maybe I
Zone.
just maybe it's just because I think I see his name come across that Criterion group that we're in on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, he's and one I need to get back to eventually. I saw Videodrome just before I got on the Letterbox, and I purchased that one. That's a pretty crazy one. Yeah, Cronenberg. The next one is related to your last pick. My 24 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And this was billed to me as a piece of shit. And I actually had a lot of fun with it. It's an absolute parody of the first one. It's mocking it in almost every single way. There's some really great like over-the-top gore in it. So definitely don't come in expecting like a traditional horror movie. This is definitely mocking everything about what the original stood for. And I kind of dug it because I mean, I'm not a traditional slasher horror fan, so I don't really have these like deep-seated like beloved of these things. So I don't mind seeing them being mocked. And Dennis Hopper gets in a chainsaw fight with Leatherface. End of story. It was that part was fantastic. Check out more of my Letterboxd review. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's kind of a silly, crazy, good time. A little gory too. And my number 23 was another half watch. The original Child's Play is way better than what you'd think. The effects are pretty good. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I only kind of half watched it. Definitely check back to my Letterboxd review for more details. But yeah, it's a really solid movie for being the premise of this silly like doll being possessed, and then having to repossess the kid that he first told his secret to. Yeah, Child's Play 23.
Excellent. Are you coming back to me now?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do number 19.
Okay.
It's actually one I watched yesterday. So this is gonna be Nosferatu. And we watched this on
the black and white version or the Warner Herzog.
Oh, this is the 1922.
Okay.
It was
the
black
original.
and white.
Okay.
Yeah. We watched this on Amazon Prime, and so they had one of the public domain ones, so it didn't have any color tinting. So that kind of took away from it, because some of the times where it's just like, this looks like it's freaking daytime.
Right.
And there was some of the ways it was cut, like some of the tiles were cut on the right. I mean, you could still read it, but it was kind of cut weird. And then one of the big iconic scenes where he stands up on the ship, his whole head was cut off. But there was still some of the great scenes, him walking in the hallways and stuff. So there were some really great shots for the time period and such. But and then the pipe organ, like the dude was just jamming on the pipe organ. Like, it was really freaking great. But like I think it was one of the things like we discussed. There's like a really great Region B release with like the original German tiles, but with subs at the bottom and all that kind of stuff that we're probably going to look into getting and just rewatch it, because it'd probably add a lot more to it and probably would have been a lot higher than that. But this definitely, if you're into horror and especially into vampires like me, I can't believe I hadn't watched it before. But yeah, it's great. It just with some of that stuff, it just fell down the list. So
cool. Yeah, I saw that a long while back. I do remember it being one of the more watchable silent movies I've seen. I definitely enjoy the story of I think in that story what he gets shipped to they find him and then he gets shipped to like England and kind of wreaks havoc whenever like rats show up and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, the rats he was using to hide him murdering people, so people would think it was the plague, because he killed the whole ship, and then the notes from the captain was like, I think it's the plague, and so then everyone was quarantined in town, and they're like, oh, you can't take your sick to the hospital because we think it's the plague, and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of cool. I mean, that was some good storytelling. It was a good silent movie. I haven't seen very many, but that one I think I've seen 4 now, and I've seen 3 this year, 2 this month. So
which number was that again?
That was number 19 for me.
Okay, let me catch up now. Okay, my next one up is another family horror movie I checked out. I kind of half watched it previously, but I finally gave my full attention to it this time, and that is Monster House. This is a pretty good flick. The CGI in this movie is so dated. Like there's some moments where it looks pretty nice when they're like kind of showing how it's fall time and showing these leaves falling, but then you get up these like close shots of these people's faces and it's like, oh, this doesn't look good. But what really is the redeeming factor in this movie is the characters are so doggone relatable. You have these kind of misfit kids and their interactions between each other are just really, really endearing. And yeah, it's this crazy story about this possessed house and this crazy guy next door, and it's pretty silly. They do this whole big exposition dump towards the end to kind of explain away what this whole premise was. It's a pretty good movie. Some good action in there, enduring characters. Unfortunately, it doesn't look quite as crisp as. I think if it had a better look, it probably would rank much higher on my list. That's the one main thing dragging it down. Definitely kind of has that kind of like Goonies, Spielberg kind of feel to the characters. So I definitely appreciated that aspect. My number 21, I saw the Addams Family remake. The animated version. And when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, well, that looks like a pile of shit. But my kids wanted to go see it, so we went, and I actually had a really good time with it. Definitely kind of captured the spirit of what I remember the Addams Family being. This is before I rewatched the movies. There was actually a lot of cool horror references in there. There was, of course, one to The Shining. One that I spotted from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In the trailer, you'll see the It one. That's pretty clear. It has kind of an on-the-nose story about kind of embracing each other's differences, but I think there's nothing wrong with that kind of story being in a kid's film. And the Addams animated film, I thought it was pretty decent. It kind of had some cool backstory to it of where the Addams came from and how they came to their house, so that part got filled in. I posted my review online, and then I looked at what other people I follow thought, and they all thought it was a pile of shit. So you just never know sometimes. So the next one, my number 20, I kind of saw on a whim, and this will be pretty quick. My kids wanted to rewatch Toy Story of Terror, and so I was like, okay, we'll pop that in. And you can definitely tell the guys at Pixar, ladies and gentlemen over there, had a fun time pulling over the horror references to kind of put in this TV special. I was actually working at ABC Television, punching up commercials at the time when this aired, so I kind of have that little piece of my memory on this one. Pretty simple story of the toys going to this hotel, a dark, stormy night kind of deal, and they go, of course, go out of the book bag and explore, and shenanigans happen. It's kind of neat. They elevate it a little bit because like Jessie's the main character of this one, and her real life anxiety of claustrophobia gets played into the mix. So that's an actual fear that is brought into this kid's horror film. So I thought that was clever. And the last part I'll note on there is there's this character called Mr. Prickle Pants, and he's all into the theater, and he's like, as they're going along, he's like, well, this is what happens in classic horror movies. Oh, yep, it happened. And so it actually kind of reminded me of myself, the fact that I write these analysis of movies, and I make references to, oh, this probably was inspired by that and this and that, and so I was like, oh, that kind of spoke to me a little bit. All right, and then my number 19 is Little Monsters. This is a movie that got recommended to me by the Criterion Creeps as a family horror movie, and this is on Netflix, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. Howie Mandel plays this like blue monster-looking thing that comes from under the bed. He's pretty much unrecognizable in this role. The only thing that's really like stands out is his voice inflection at times. And this is a really creative concept about like these kids and their parents blame them for all these shenanigans going on around their houses, and they're like, it wasn't me. It was the monster under the bed, and sure enough, it was the monster under the bed. There's a lot of stuff towards the end that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I thought it was a really, Fred Savage is in it, and that kid was like charming as hell back in the late 80s when he was the shit. And Ben Savage is his brother, and it wasn't until this movie that I realized that the kid from the Wonder Years was actually related to the kid from Boy Meets World, and that blew my mind. So, and they actually play brothers in this movie. I thought it was a really good time. There's kind of this fun moment towards the end where they go against the bad monsters, and they kind of have like this friends, kids rule kind of moment. Like I said, a lot of the stuff towards the end doesn't really make a lot of sense, but overall for a kids movie, I think my kids were like, my kids were taking a nap and I woke them up and I'm like, hey, let's watch Little Monsters, and they were like hooked the whole time to this thing. Yeah, I had never heard of this thing before, but we had a great time watching it. So Little Monsters, definitely recommend from me on that one. And that brings me my 18, but let's go to you first.
All right, so my number 18 was The Conjuring.
Hmm.
So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
This was the only one I watched in two sittings. I started it at night and I could not finish it. Like the first hour or so, like just it was the build. I don't know. I was just super tired. I couldn't finish it, so I had to watch it the next day. That second 45 minutes or so, though, I was really into it. But I have a couple of things I would like to start off. Why in the fuck would you give a spirit permission to inhabit a doll, much less that creepy as fuck doll? And then also near the end, the cop brought a shotgun into a haunted house. That's going to go well, right? Like just bringing a shotgun into a haunted house. So I thought the movie was, I'm not big into like possessions and ghosts as much as you are. Like that seems to be like your super favorite thing. It's not quite as much mine, but this one was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I just watched it was when we first talked about we were going to do the list and I made it. This one was a little bit higher. It just kind of fell as I started watching some other stuff I liked more.
Okay.
But let's be real. This movie, like from the get, this movie wasn't about the haunted house. This movie was about Annabelle and setting up the 700 Annabelle movies apparently that have this whole Annabelle universe and all of that. So, but they did some good stuff in this movie. And so, if you're into creepy ass dolls, if you're into horror possession, ghost possessions, all that stuff, and it's based off of a true story, then go watch this movie. It was pretty legit. So.
Yeah, I rewatched this earlier this year, and I remember the first time I watched it, I was like totally blown away. But this recent time, I really liked all the creepiness of all the ghosts and stuff. I think the end's a little bit cheesy with like how the mother possession part and how like she comes out of it. I thought it's a little cheesy how that's handled. But otherwise, I think the Conjuring's a real solid horror flick. My number 18 is Train to Busan. I really enjoyed this one. It essentially felt like, kind of a Korean version of The Walking Dead for the most part, which I enjoyed. The Walking Dead, I watched that for many, many seasons before I finally lost interest in it, mostly because of my growing movie addiction. There's some bad CGI here and there. The father and daughter story is pretty good. I love the ending, like the whole Aloha thing, like at the very end. I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was pretty clever how they made it. They went from train to train to train. They did a super good job of making me totally hate like the guy who ends up becoming the antagonist. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid zombie film. Not my favorite on my list. But yeah, it's a good watch, and it was a long time coming to finally watch it.
I'm actually really sad that I watched that movie earlier this year and didn't get to put it in my list. But I'll go ahead and tell you, like you made that number 18 for this month. That's number 19 for the year for me. And I don't like zombie movies generally. And for a long time, that was in my top 10 for the year. I absolutely love that movie. So yeah, I recommend that movie to everybody. But like I've discussed, I have a growing addiction to Korean films. So that's not very surprised. So. But moving on to number 17 for me, I think we're going to maybe have an interesting conversation here. I finally got around to watching this one. This one's been on my radar for a while. It's from the Criterion Collection, and I watched it on the channel. This is The Lure. It's a horror musical, although musical not in the sense like when you think of musical, you think of something like Rent or La La Land or something where most of the dialogue is done in music, even though this was more of a musical because their job was they were in like a go-go band, and then there was like one musical scene. But anyway, that's what it was listed as, horror musical. so we'll go with that. Um, so this shows like kind of the siren song effects of mermaids, and I guess in that universe, mermaids were kind of accepted. The mermaids would do some voodoo and stuff and have legs. If they got wet, have their tails back. And this one mermaid wants to just eat people, and the other one falls in love with a boy, and she wants him to, fuck her, and so she can become a real girl, and basically like Ariel, and for exchange of her voice. But he falls in love with a human after she transplants, does this weird transplant where they make another girl a mermaid and make her a human, and he fucks her, and then he leaves her. It was really weird. But then they're eating people, and then she turns into foam, which is what the other guy said.
Mm-hmm.
It was really weird. It's a decent movie. Like, it's one that like, I didn't rate it super high. Like, I actually rated it lower than The Conjuring, but I, like, star wise, would put it ahead of The Conjuring just because it had some it had some interesting concepts, I guess. And I just, like, I feel like it'd be one I could rewatch, and maybe there'd be something else that I'd pick up that I missed. Maybe because I wouldn't be as distracted by all the naked women this time or something. I don't know. But it's definitely out there. It's not Japanese out there, but it's out there.
I saw this probably about 2 years ago, and this one has a notorious record of there was a night where I watched The Lure first, and then I watched Sexy Beast, and I really was not into either of them. And having a double feature where both movies you're just like not digging at all is just really a downer. I don't remember a whole lot from it. I do remember liking like the designs of the mermaids. I was a little underwhelmed by the story. But the one thing I remember isn't there a scene like where they're like dancing and singing through like a shopping mall?
Yes, that's like the actual one, in my opinion, the one musical, like traditional musical spot.
Yeah, that's the one that still kind of hangs in my memory of. That was pretty cool. That was pretty, some pretty vivid photography and kind of like a music video going on there. But that's pretty much all that leaves me. I remember the sea phone part, and I was like, well, that was a movie. So wasn't that into it. All right. My number 17, I got around to seeing The Others again. Spoiler alert. So my main takeaway from The Others is it's still a pretty solid movie, even though you can't unsee this movie. Have you seen The Others with Nicole Kidman?
I believe I saw it a long time ago.
Okay.
So if we're doing spoilers, memory serves me, either she's a ghost, or the kids are ghosts, or they're all ghosts.
Yeah, they're all ghosts.
Yeah.
So watching it back again, you kind of see how it all pieces together with them all being ghosts. The most effective part scare-wise in this movie is the bombastic like sound effects that kind of really amp up during some of the scary scenes. It has kind of a cool seance scene as well, kind of a reverse seance scene, because they're sitting there in the room and they're getting all upset that they're finally figuring out that they're ghosts, and like then you see it from like the human's perspective, or the people that are living's perspective. So yeah, I think it relatively holds up for being a movie you really can't unsee, like The Sixth Sense or Shawshank Redemption. I mean, once you see like the big like reveal in those movies, like that pretty much stays with you, and you'll know it forever. But yeah, I thought I was impressed that it was still a watchable movie despite the fact that you pretty much know what's going on the whole time. A period piece, so there's some interesting period elements. Like there's like this Book of the Dead in it, where like they show these pictures of people that are dead with their eyes open or something. But yeah, that was a cool eerie part. But The Others, yeah, I enjoyed revisiting that one.
All right. So number 16, we're going to go with another Criterion pick for me. And this is another big classic that I had never seen. My first from this director as well. That's going to be Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, so my first Polanski. And I was real hyped up to see this one also, especially it got the mention earlier in our other when we did Once Upon a Time in I was to say America, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I never seen a Polanski movie. This one was very slow burn, a lot of build.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even though that I didn't know the end, I think I just figured it out really early, and that took away some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just because so many other movies have done something very similar, and that just kind of took away from it. But like, really, who the fuck lets spoiler lets Satan have sex with her wife? Like, really? Like, for fame and fortune, you're gonna let someone like like bone me a pharaoh? Like, really? Like, come on, guy. And the dude's name is Guy. I'm not just calling him Guy. But like douche canoe. Like, come on, seriously. But like the movie was really well shot. Like there was a lot. Like you can see why Polanski's like this. Before he did the things that he did, that is why he hadn't come back into this country or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like why he was such a revered director, why it was such a, and why is this a revered horror movie? Like, I mean, I gave it a very good review, like a very good rating. It just, I was sitting there going, yeah, there's it didn't grasp me as some of the other ones, but it was still a good movie, and I definitely like never seen it, and if you're one of the people who separates art from the artist, if not, you can't overlook what he did, and that's understandable. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want to see a classic, horror movie, then this is definitely one to go see.
Yeah, I saw this one right. This was another one I saw right before I got on Letterbox. I remember this being one of the movies where I really enjoyed like the feminine angle of her being like paranoid about all these like people kind of being against her. I thought the end with like the crib or the or whatever the baby's in, that was a little cheesy. Yeah, that's one I'll have to get back to eventually. Fond memories of it, but a little cheesy towards the end. My number 16, I had talked about it before. This was actually the first scary movie I watched this season, Crawl, involving the alligators and the hurricane down in Florida, and they're in a crawl space. That's where the whole movie takes place. Some pretty bad CGI, but pretty, in terms of the storm, pretty good CGI in terms of the alligators. It's a wild ride. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's kind of like an R-rated Jurassic Park with alligators. I mean, if you like that, then check out Crawl. It's not a masterpiece, but it's fun.
Fair enough. My next one was one of the big horror movies from the end of last year. That is Bird Box. Um,
No, Bird Box is higher than Rosemary's Baby. Okay, do tell.
um, all right. Honestly, mainly because of Sandra Bullock.
Mm. Okay, touche.
I mean, like it wasn't okay. So like star rating, it's not. Rosemary's Baby was higher. But just like it was an enjoyable movie. I also watched another movie that was basically the same movie, and it was much better than this one. But
Oh, Quiet
um,
Place. How about that?
yeah, go figure. I mean, they came out in the same year.
Yeah. Although the book for Bird Box came out before Quiet Place, so just for the record.
Well, there you go. But I feel like most people have seen this movie. Or I feel like I was late catching this one. Just uh, you know, I feel like without Sandra Bullock, this movie is probably way more forgettable. Like she does what she does, and she just kind of carried the movie. But it had a disjointed timeline, which I'm generally on board with, and you saw the differences between now and 5 years ago. I really like that they don't show you the monster because they can't see the monster, so you never get to see the monster or the creature or whatever it is. I thought that was a really good touch. Um, but you see how much he cares for the two children, and you obviously you see why the movie is called Bird Box. That makes a lot of sense. And the experience down the river, and you get to the end, and you see how they survive. And parallels to A Quiet Place. There's so many of them. I talked about it after I watched A Quiet Place the other day.
Hmm.
It's very harrowing that they never really explained the monster or any of that. So I think if somehow you lived under a rock in 2018 and you didn't watch this movie, that you should give it a shot. Like, it's not a great movie. It's in the middle of my list, but definitely think it's worth watching. Like, I think, like I said, Sandra Bullock carries it, but that's kind of what she does.
Nice. Yeah, I saw this relatively soon after it first hit Netflix. I remember really enjoying kind of the river stuff, but when they flashed back to the people in the house, I just did not give a shit about any of that. And then I hated the ending. I hated the ending. The ending was dumb. I hated the ending. I hated the ending. I thought it was so cheesy with how, like, what the whole gimmick of the movie was, and how, like, the ending was like this, like, such a cheesy way to, like, conclude that. It had
I
some
mean,
creepy moments, but that ending.
it makes sense. Like, it's not the best ending, but like it made sense. Like, how are you how like where's a sanctuary that's going to get away from this monster that if you see it drives
Mm-hmm.
you insane? Well, spoiler, blind people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it I was kind of pissed at myself that didn't even dawn on me. Like, oh, like, dull. I will say the thing that was cheesy was that, like, her doctor or whatever was there and, like, had survived it.
Yeah.
Was like that. Like, that was the kind of thing that was cheesy. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember a lot of people were like really high on Machine Gun Kelly, like the rapper. In this movie, and like, oh, he was so good in this movie, like he was barely in it. And like, if you want to talk about a movie he was great in, we can talk about The Dirt, where I didn't even know it was him as Tommy Lee until the end of the movie, and he was
Mm-hmm.
great in that movie. But I digress.
All right.
So
My number 15 was another recommend from the Criterion Creeps. I watched The Halloween Tree. I had never heard of this movie. This is a kid's, I think it was a made for TV Halloween film that came on Cartoon Network back in the day. And this was a really, really solid movie for in terms of it being kind of this made for TV thing. It's about this, again, this close knit group of friends, and they just kind of go on this adventure on Halloween night. I watched this kind of early in the month, so I'm kind of quickly trying to remember what it's about. Leonard Nimoy plays like the creepy old man who is like kind of like telling like the history of Halloween from all these different cultural aspects, and each of the kids is dressed up as a monster, and so he like the movie segmented of kind of like taking a deeper exploration to each of these different characters' background in terms of the Halloween legend around the world. And I thought it was a really enduring story and about friendship. Kind of made me tear up at the end. And yeah, really solid family Halloween kids flick. I definitely recommend checking out The Halloween Tree.
nice. All right, so this is number 14. This is the first of my, I think, six movies that I rewatched. So the top is kind of littered with a couple of these.
Okay.
And and this one is another super classic, 5-star, great movie. This is The Shining, which I watched on October 1st. So this one has been a while, and this was
At 14.
mhm.
Okay.
I mean, it's 5 stars, and I think it's a great movie. But there are movies I definitely enjoy a lot more than this movie.
All right.
Um, because the movie in okay, you are like, you love Kubrick. I don't love Kubrick quite as much as you do, actually, like, really at all. Um, so
Okay.
like, my favorite Kubrick movie is The Killing. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, um,
Have you seen all of them?
I've seen not all of them, but I've seen uh, several.
Okay.
Um, this one's probably Shining's probably my third favorite, but we digress. Um,
Okay.
like I mean, if we were ranking them in as pure, which ones are the best? This is probably like three or four, maybe five. Like I saw some other like bangers, but like we're doing, yeah. So anyway, this is Shining. I don't really know how much I need to go into this. Like we're people listening to this for horror movies. They generally know, Red Rum, Jack Nicholson, like one of his greatest performances. How much Stanley Kubrick terrified Shelley Duvall to get to get the performance out of her. The 4K, or actually it was the 1080p Blu-ray that we watched, but it was in the 4K steelbook was great. Like it was a great movie. Um, and if you haven't seen it, or even if you have, I mean, just rewatch it. I mean, it's a great horror movie. It isn't necessarily the best adaptation of a King novel because I mean they take some liberties, but that's what happens when you take books into movies. So what do you expect? Um, but it's great. It's always great.
Okay, yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. As you know, I love Kubrick. The music, Jack Nicholson, the setting, the mythology, um, all play and no, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. I could just go on and on and on. I've seen it on the big screen. I've seen it so many times. I've read the book, and I love The Shining. And for more, check out my Letterboxd review. I really try to throw it all on the page. So, number 14, I finally got around to seeing Cabin in the Woods. And I think we had this discussion early on in the cast that I wasn't a big fan of. What was your favorite movie from last year? What's the name of that thing?
My favorite movie from last year was La La Land.
But at Bad Times at the
Okay, at El Royale, when we earlier this year, that was ranked as my number one movie for this year.
Oh, okay.
That I had, but it is no longer. It is now number three.
Okay. I wasn't a big fan of that movie. I thought it was kind of like imitation Tarantino. But Cabin in the Woods. Go ahead.
I was saying, like you say, it's like an imitation, and I feel like it's more like an homage, but different strokes, different folks.
Yeah. This one is kind of it's a deconstruction slash pair. Have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
I have, but it has been a really, really long time.
So it's essentially a deconstruction parody of the slasher genre Cabin in the Woods concept, and I knew that coming in, and I thought it was a fun time seeing it all play out, especially towards the end where they really go off the wall with like they show this scene underground where all these like monsters, and then where they take it at the very end with the big reveal of why this is all happening. I thought that was pretty hilarious. A good time. It's funny to see them bet on the kids, and they're saying, well, it's not really, it's not. I mean, we're just opening the door, and they're the ones that have to go through it. And yeah, I had a good time with Cabin in the Woods. It's on the 1001 movies you should see before you die list, which is a little surprising. But yeah, it's pretty fun for deconstruction horror, and I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, the one thing I remember is Chris Hemsworth like getting on the motorcycle and like trying to like make that jump and then just hitting that wall.
Yeah,
So
it's like the bird earlier.
yeah, and then you got Amy Acker. If you're a Joss Whedon fan, she's pretty well known from being in the Joss Whedon universe, the Whedonverse, and she's in it. Those are the two main things I remember. Like I kind of want to go back and watch that one. So. All right, so I think we're up to 13 for me. And that is Ginger Snaps. So the one I had not seen before, and it's one of my good friends. It's one of her favorite movies, so I finally broke down and watched that. If you've never seen it before, it's about these two sisters, and one of them becomes a werewolf. It also deals with a lot of coming of age teenage things, and girls going through puberty and being picked on, and all of that kind of coming of age stuff. So it deals with a lot of that kind of stuff, but literally it's one of the sisters is a werewolf and the other one is trying to help her and find a cure, and at first the girl's like, yeah, I don't want to be a werewolf, and then she just kind of embraces it, and she becomes a little slutty, and she goes wild, and she infects another person, and it it's fun. It's definitely not great. But it's definitely, you can tell it's a 2000s, made in 2000, so it definitely has that late 90s, early 2000s feel, like the soundtrack and the look, and the werewolf actually does not look super great. Like, I think the werewolves in Buffy, the TV show, which are around the same area, like in time period, look better. And it's kind of crazy since that's a TV show and not a movie. But hey, I digress. Like I even said in my review, not the best, not the worst, worth watching, but it was fun. It has two sequels, which I've not seen, but that deal with the same two sisters. And one's a sequel and one's a prequel, and the prequel seemed kind of weird, but yeah. So that's Ginger Snaps.
I've heard a lot about that one. Maybe eventually I'll see it. Yeah, I was gonna.
Free on Prime, if my memory serves.
Also, it sounds a lot like this movie Thoroughbred that came out a few years ago. But I hadn't seen that either. So, yep, can't talk about what you can't see. My next one, we had a family movie night. I had my sister and my nephew and my niece over, and I put on Suspiria for them because my niece is a dancer, and I thought that might click with her. And yeah, my sister and my niece were not into this movie at all, but I actually enjoyed it more than I did the first time. Man, that Goblin soundtrack, like, it's just, I love cranking that up on my surround sound. It's probably too loud and too much, but it's still awesome. The first time I watched Suspiria, I thought the kills were really, really, really cheesy. Like whenever she falls on like the razor wire and the whole bat thing. But I dug it a lot more the second time I watched it. So I enjoyed Suspiria more than I did on a rewatch. There's definitely that slow build towards the end. You're like, oh, just get on with it. Go through the door already. But yeah, the original, I need to watch more Dario Argento. Maybe, hopefully, by the time Halloween movie season here is wrapped up, I'll see at least one more Dario Argento, because I'm seriously lacking in his catalog. But the original Suspiria, had a better time with it the second time around. Definitely a little freakier than I remember it being.
Yeah, I saw that right after, not that long after I moved into the current place that I live. Because my roommate Nightflyer has that Steelbook release. Like, he just jammed in and got it somehow. That's nice. One of his favorite movies.
It's a really nice Steelbook.
Yes, and I love that movie. That movie was fantastic. That's my only Argento to this point. I definitely want to see more of his catalog, and it was kind of sad that we didn't manage to get that one in on a rewatch, but I'm sure that we'll either rewatch it sometime in the next 2 months or sometime next year, just for the hell of it. You answered my question, because I was going to ask you if it was the OG or the remake. I kind of figured it was going to be the OG, because, yeah. So, all right.
The remake would be worth watching again, but I'm not sure when I'd make time to watch that again.
That's fair. We watched that earlier this year because I bought it for him for his birthday. Since he liked the first one so much. So we're going to move on to number 12.
Yeah.
And this is one I watched yesterday. And it's another movie about two sisters. It's called A Tale of Two Sisters.
Okay.
It's another Korean movie. And I'm not going to lie, yo, man. This movie bangs real hard. You be prepared. Like if you're going to watch this movie, don't be trying to like do anything after this movie. I took a shower after watching this movie, and then watched like a really, really silly, cheesy action horror movie after this one to like clear my head, because whoa, like,
it gets under your skin.
It was a mind fuck, dude. Like you're watching this movie, and like I kind of had it figured out, like I kind of called it, and then it gives you something else, and you're like, okay, you got it figued out, and then you had nothing. you had nothing. Like it's these two girls and they come home from a mental institution and they don't like stepmom and you don't know why they were in the mental institution and then it's something to do with their mom's death and like stepmom's beating them, but is she? And then like stepmom invites her sister over, and husband or her brother and her sister-in-law, and then there's a seizure, and there's these ghosts, and like bloody floorboards, and it's like I say that's not even the best way to describe it. Like it's I think we watched it on Shudder. So if you have Prime, you can get a 7-day free subscription and watch it through Shudder, or you just pay the $5. If you like horror movies, just pay the $5 for Shudder. Like it's totally worth it. It's like I spent the entire thing like, oh, I think I've got it figured out. I think I've got it figured. No, just like, and it's like it's messing with my head trying to talk about it. Like it's, oh my god, it is really good. It's just Korea, just Korea.
All right, my number 12 is the original Addams Family. Saw this a couple years ago and revisited it after I watched the animated one. And yeah, what can you say? They're creaky and they're creepy and they're spooky. I'm not as big of a fan as they waste so much time like with the whole like Fester as an imposter. I rather see Fester just being Fester, but I digress. There's a lot of cool, fun parts throughout. And yeah, if you're a kid in the early 90s, you probably enjoyed the Addams Family quite a bit, and I recommend getting back to it.
Nice. I haven't seen that in a very, very long time. I remember the cast was really good.
Mm-hmm.
With
Christopher Lloyd is like totally unrecognizable as Fester. It's amazing. Yeah. And then what was it? Christina Ricci as Wednesday as just awesome.
Yeah, and she's done some like I don't want to say cosplays, but she's dressed up as Morticia now, and it's like, yo, give me the remake with her as Morticia. Like, all right, so number 11, and this is one of the quintessential '80s horror movies.
Okay.
Yep. There we go. And I had somehow, like, I had thought I had seen this, or I had listed as I seen it, but I literally did not remember anything of it, and I found it in one of my the same day I bought Blood Mania. I found the Blu-ray for $3, so I bought it. This is Nightmare on Elm Street. So I mean, everyone knows, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better shut your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never gonna sleep again. Like, and this was a lot better. Like, this movie, all the other Freddy movies may be absolute garbage. This movie is not. This movie was great. I had a really good time watching it. It spawned like that entire franchise. It even crossed over with its running mate Friday the 13th, which I've never seen. Freddy versus Jason. I kind of want to, just out of sheer curiosity. One of the things I remembered is had a lot of good imagery of using beds as coffins, which I thought was really good since it's a dream demon. It also, the other big thing that it did was it even said in the title screen introducing Jonathan Depp. Like they knew that man was going to be a star. So that's the movie that gave us Johnny Depp. So Edward Scissorhands and Jack Sparrow and all the other things that man has done. So also the main character's name was Nancy. And what is it with white girls named Nancy, especially in the 80s, things going around and doing shit they're not supposed to do? I think I had just finished Stranger Things. Well, not just finished, but the main girl, one of the main girls, and that is Nancy, and she goes around getting into shit she's not supposed to do. So anyway, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. It's good. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it. If you have, just rewatch it, and it's great.
I saw that for the first time last year, and I had a really, really good time with it. I thought it was so much better than Friday the 13th. So I'm definitely more of a Freddy fan than I am a Jason fan at this point. I've only seen, and I hated Friday the 13th Part 2. So maybe before the end of the season's out, I'll watch Part 3. Not expecting for a lot there. Also need to watch Hellraiser 2, and I've heard Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 is garbage. So it'll be interesting to get into those. My number 11, paired nicely, is Addams Family Values. I just watched this a few nights ago, and while I really liked the first one, man, I love this one. This is the one I saw in the theater. This one is a lot more focused on the kids. Like there's this new baby in the situation, and they're like, oh, they're worried about like that one of them is going to be killed if the baby's not killed. So they're like doing all this crazy stuff to possibly kill the baby. Then they get sent off to summer camp, and I'm a Boy Scout. I do all the Boy Scout stuff, so I love the great outdoors and camps and stuff. So all that really spoke to me. I think one of the best Addams Family scenes is whenever Gomez and Morticia are doing the tango in that fine restaurant that they are in with Debbie and Fester. And then Fester juxtaposes it by shoving breadsticks up his nose and looking like an absolute fool. What I noticed about it this time was the fact that like the Addams Family is this very gothic, macabre, kind of deal, and Debbie's a serial killer. And I'd never noticed the fact that the Addams Family kind of admires Debbie for being this psychotic killer. But at the same time, she's taking their Fester away, so they're not pleased about that part. So, Addams Family Values, it's the best of the bunch, in my opinion.
All right, my number 10, and this is the only one I kind of really consider a stretch, but I had to watch it because of another movie that you'll see later in the list, and this is from our favorite director himself, Mr. Quentin Tarantino, and this is Death Proof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch, but I watched Planet Terror, and if you watch one half of Grindhouse, you have to watch the other half of Grindhouse, kind of a rule. So, but I think with Stuntman Mike, the way he stalks everybody and that kind of stuff, that you can put it in the horror genre. So for those who aren't familiar with it, it's Kurt Russell being a creepy stalker guy, and he kills poor Rose McGowan, and then he kills poor Sidney Poitier, and then he tries to kill Rosario Dawson and Zoe Bell and some other people, and they instead beat the living shit out of him. And hey, there you go. There's of course Quentin Tarantino with lots of feet shots, and he also had a lot of butt shots, and there's a lot of good car chasing, but it is what it is. There's some good crashes. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than when I had previous watched it. There's of course there's a lot of movie references to so many other things, to like Crazy Mary Larry, and I think that's the wrong name of the movie, but yeah, they just mentioned a lot of other stuff and doing stunts and all that kind of stuff. It's a good movie, of course, and that was my number 10.
Nice. And we'll be right back with me and Joey's top 10 after this short break. And we're back. Welcome back to the Average Joe's Movie Club cast. Our Halloween extravaganza, probably our longest episode, continues on. And we're getting into our top 10. Will our reviews get shorter, longer? Who knows? But we still have a full movie analysis on one of them, which is actually my number 10 pick, Halloween, which we will go into full detail in here in a little while. So John Carpenter's classic film with Michael Myers. Really enjoy it. There's a part that I don't like so much about it, which knocks it down a slight peg, but there's a lot of great stuff about it too, and we'll get into all that in a lot of detail. So, Joey, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Scream 2. And let's see, yeah. So
That's the one where they go to college, right?
yes, that is the one where Sydney goes to college. It's
Okay.
also the one where they introduce the movie Stab, which is the movie about Scream 1. So you got two people you've got Timothy Olyphant, who I absolutely love in this movie, which I did not even know who he was when I watched it as a child or teenager. And so that added to it. It's got Sarah Michelle Gellar watching Nosferatu, which, holy God, I like fucking fangirl so hard. That's such a good thing. I mean, for those for some reason who don't know, Sarah Michelle Gellar is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so she's watching a movie about Dracula. Um, so it's still meta like the first one. Um, it's got it continues with the Stellar's 90s cast with, like I said, Sarah Michelle Gellar, obviously. Wow, just literally blanked on Monica Gellar's real name. Courtney Cox Arquette, David Arquette. So you've got all of them. Jerry O'Connell. So like you've got this great cast. And you take the Scream formula and you keep running with it. It was a lot better. I remember thinking that this movie was garbage, and then I watched it because I watched Scream, which haha, we're in the top 10 and haven't talked about it yet, so it'll be somewhere later on. And here it is at number 9. So I really enjoyed it.
Nice. My number 9 pick is Diabolique, which is a French horror film. It's a Criterion pick, so I'm finally actually ranking a Criterion pick up here in my list. Finally. Have you ever seen this one?
I have not. I don't think I've ever even heard of this one.
Okay. So I'll try to keep it vague, not to spoil it, because this is another one where you probably couldn't unsee it once you know what's going on. And I had promised somebody on Letterboxd that I would watch this, and it was late one night, and I was like, oh, do I really want to watch a foreign language flick where I'm going to have to read the subtitles? Oh, whatever, I'll just do it. And this thing just took me by the balls, and it went. And this was made in 1955, and there are some genuine kind of horrific scenes throughout this movie. It's tension-filled. It's about this wife and a mistress that are just not into the husband at all, and they're planning to kill him. And the tension that rides into through the wife, like this whole time, where she's really hesitant about what's going on, is so palpable. Like, she's very uneasy the whole time, and there's this twist, and things start unraveling because their plan isn't going exactly according to what they had perceived. Definitely don't want to spoil this for anyone that hasn't seen it. For being a French horror film from the 50s, I was just blown away. So that easily cracked my top 10. My favorite horror movie from the Criterion Collection, Diabolique.
Nice. So we're going to go to my number 8, and this is going to be my favorite movie that I've seen this year from the Criterion Collection. Oh. And it's one, yep, you ranked it like number 33 or so. Yeah. It's the big one we knew we were going to disagree on, and that's The Phantom Carriage. Okay. So silent film from Sweden. Like you talked about, Ingmar took a lot of inspiration and such from, but like where you hated how shitty Dude Man was, like who's just really invested. He was really shitty. He treated everybody like trash. He got him sick. For some reason, Homegirl still loved him. His wife left him, then took him back, and it was just like, why are people still giving him a chance? And it's just, but oh man, the Phantom Carriage itself looked great. I thought the musical cues were great. I just thought everything about this whole movie was great. I was intrigued by it to start with because the cover looked so good, and I read the back because this is one that my roommate owns on Criterion. So and just everything about it was intriguing to start with, and then we started watching it, and I was just blown away by everything. It like where it didn't snatch you, it snatched me, and I think that was just kind of the difference. And I just felt like the tension in everything of it um was great from the get go. I just think it's a definite must watch. Um,
I
if
just
you're,
rem-
I mean, if you don't, I was going to say if you don't like silent films, like then obviously don't. But like if you're into silent films, like or you're looking to expand your horizons, then definitely give give this one a shot.
Nice. Yeah, and I definitely would urge everyone to check out at least one silent film a year just to kind of, fill in the gaps of like your movie knowledge in terms of that whole era. I just remembered one of the parts I disliked about it was the fact that, did you notice where there would be like really, really long scenes where they would show them like talking, 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 and you were like, where's the title card? What's going on? They're still talking. What's going on? And then finally he would get the title card. It's like, oh, okay. Did you ever feel like it left you hanging there?
I mean, a little bit, but I mean, I kind of feel that way in a lot of silent movies. So,
Okay. And then
or I should say a lot. I've
Haxon
only seen a few.
then Haxon was the complete opposite. It was like a title card every other minute, and it was like a whole page of all this just stuff that I just did not give a shit about. So in terms of Haxon and the Phantom Carriage, I kind of had opposite experiences on with title cards. But yeah, I it's cool that the story really grabbed you. I definitely can see how the humanistic elements. But yeah, yeah didn't do it for me. All right, my number
Fair enough.
8 is one we've already talked about in great detail. Cube. I really enjoyed revisiting Cube. I love the whole like existential like talking about like the existence of like our purpose in the world chatter that goes on. The acting's pretty bad. But yeah, I think it's fascinating seeing all these characters come together and really melt as the situation becomes more and more dire and they didn't need to move in the first place. And that's Cube.
Hmm. All right, my number seven is A Quiet Place, which we kind of alluded to earlier when I was talking about another movie. Um, it was really interesting to see Jim uh, in a different role
Mm-hmm.
than as Jim from The Office.
Yeah.
Um, and Emily Blunt, I kept referring to her as fake ass Pam, even though that's not very fair. Emily Blunt and Jenna Fisher are very obviously different people.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed this one. One of the things I really liked was how they used sound to break up silence when you usually most movies use silence to break sound, but
Mm-hmm.
they obviously went a different direction. So one of the parallels that I thought was in this movie, you see the monster really early, whereas in Bird Box you never see the monster, which because the people never see the monster, so you never see it. In this one, you see the creature monster, but whereas in Bird Box they bounce back and forth. This one it's 3 months after the incident, and then it's like 14, 15, 16 months, however long after the incident, and they never explain anything. You just they kind of give you bits and pieces in newspapers and in like his room and stuff. The one thing that probably kept this one from being higher is you get to near the end, and there's a scene where they've got the baby in the soundproof room, and then all of a sudden it starts flooding, and everything around that whole scene with the flooded room I thought was really bad. Now, my roommate and my other friend also watched this, and they had a lot of issue with the fact that they decided to have a child. Um, Anybody who hasn't seen that, spoiler, I'm sorry, that's kind of a major plot point of the movie. Like, why would you have a kid when you can't make sounds? Yada yada yada. I'm like, listen, humans aren't going to stop screwing. they're gonna screw, especially a husband and a wife. Like I didn't have an issue with that. So, but like I thought that the design of the character, I mean, not the character, the monster, like I thought it looked really cool. I thought that the way they found a way to fight it at the very end, it kind of was like the maybe not in the same way, but they found a way to overcome the creature was alien-esque. You know, we're human, we're overpowered, but we figured out a way. And it also, of course, it was, oh, these monsters can hear, it's all sound, and it was a deaf person. So that figured out a way to fight it. I super enjoyed it. It was another one of the big horror movies from last year, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it.
Nice. Yeah, I remember seeing it last year. We had a pretty good time with it. I think one of the parts that bugged me was, didn't he like not take a gun whenever he like ran out, and that ended up getting him killed or something? I remember taking issue with that part.
You talking about John Krasinski?
Yeah.
Oh, he had at the end when he runs to save the children, he sacrifices himself, but like he had gotten wounded, he had an axe and he swung the axe at the creature and it got him. But like even the gun, if you didn't shoot them like right in the face, they had armor all over them, so the gun didn't do much.
Okay. And then yeah, it was kind of a fun little moment there at the end where she I did it kind of like whenever you were talking about it, I think they're making a sequel to this movie. Yeah. I enjoyed it. Yeah, no complaints here about Quiet Place. I remember having a good time with that. My number 7 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When you wrote it a little bit lower, me a little bit higher. I was really looking forward to finally seeing this. I had never seen this before. It seemed like I was watching so many movies where it was like there was some kind of mention of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I watched the Chucky remake earlier in the year, and they're watching it there. And I was watching American Psycho, and he's watching it. And I was like, oh, I need to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I thought it really delivered. Toby Hooper, man, he shoots the hell out of this movie. I mean, there's just these beautiful, beautiful shots of just like the kids like walking across like the porch, and it's like this pan like fish lens kind of shot, and it looks amazing. The shot towards the end of the girl going into the truck all bloodied up looks fantastic. It's a really slow burn at first. It's like, geez, I mean, we're already 30 minutes into this, and it's only an hour and 10-minute movie. I mean, are we going to get anything here? And I really like how like the trap gets sprung a lot earlier than you thought, and like that first guy they pick up is dropping a lot of hints about what's coming up, a lot of good foreshadowing coming up in terms of these meat plant workers. And man, that scene where Leatherface is like just a step behind her, running her down in the darkness. Oh, that's a horror movie. Oh my God, I enjoyed the hell out of that. It slows down quite a bit after that. You have that dumb moment where you're yelling at the screen like, "Why are you running upstairs? What are you doing that for?" And then she gets away, and then you come to find out like Papa Cannibal, and he brings her back into the situation, and it kind of slows down for like the whole weird cannibal mythology like dinner thing. It's also interesting because Leatherface is just this big, massive, kind of goofy looking guy, but at the same time he's so menacing with this chainsaw. I remember reading the 1001 Movies Before You Die analysis of it, and they were talking about how Leatherface's chainsaw was phallic in nature. And I'm not sure about number 1, but then number 2 they definitely play that off, because there's a whole part where he's like almost molesting a girl with not molesting is a strong word, he's like rubbing the chainsaw against like her inner thigh or whatever. So they might have been playing that up in a comical way there. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yeah, it's kind of thrown together there at the end where she runs to one guy and then just gets in her truck, and that ends it all. And man, and also like the opening, like the credits, or not the credits, but like the backstory comes up, and it's very ominous, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, most horrific, blah 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 blah. It's such a great eerie mood. It was one of the original slashers, and it did a great job really setting the mark on that genre.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I had it ranked lower, but I mean, like I said, it probably if she didn't spend literally 25 minutes straight streaming, it probably would have been ranked a lot higher. Just like I was just over there, just like literally on the couch, just dying. So, my next one was going to be real quick because we're going to go into a lot of it later, and that's Halloween. That's going to be the feature later. So,
Okay.
I really, really, really dug this movie yesterday when I watched it. I thought it was fantastic, and we'll just talk about that here in a bit.
All right. My number 6 is a movie I put off for a long, long time. It's called Altered States by Ken Russell. So I'm not sure if you've seen The Fly before, but it's like The Fly, but on an absolute drug trip. So this is a so this is there's this movie out there called A Field in England, where there's like this whole like portion of the movie that just like totally devoted to this person, like totally tripping balls. And so the premise of Altered States is this scientist thinks he can tap into humanity's long lost like knowledge of like the history of their creation by going into this sensory deprivation tank. And so he has some experiences in there, and he's like, oh well, I want to heighten these even more. So he goes down to Mexico and links up with these folks that give him this really potent drug. And yeah, spoiler alert, it essentially kind of turns into the sci-fi monster movie at this, because somehow he is able to evolve backwards by being on these drugs and being in the sensory tank. The imagery alone, with like the trip out moments of what he sees like during these things, is worth the price of admission. It's pretty crazy with him like de-evolve. I mean, he turns into like a Neanderthal at one point and jumps out and starts beating people to death, and then he devolves all the way into goo at one point. Then there's this cheesy like love conquers all part at the end, which normally really bothers me, but I was so invested in this crazy movie that it was a wild ride. Altered States with Ken Russell. Check it out.
Nice, nice, nice. All right, so my number 5 there's another one that I watched yesterday, and that's called Mayhem. It stars Glenn from The Walking Dead, and Samara Weaving, who is my new favorite Scream Queen. I've only seen her in 2 movies, this and The Babysitter. So it's a Shudder exclusive movie. So again, if you have Prime, you can get that 7-day trial. But hey. So the premise of this movie is that there's a virus that breaks out called the ID7 virus, and it takes over your body basically, and you lose all control of your id. So if you're in public with your girlfriend and you want to just start going at it, you're going to start going at it. If you want to punch your boss in the face, you're going to punch your boss in the face. If you want to tell some random to fuck off, you're going to tell some random to fuck off. That's generally the premise. So Glenn, and that's not his name in the movie. His name in the movie is Derek. So Derek works at this law firm. He actually works, I guess it's a accounting firm. But anyway, he's a lawyer, and he found a loophole for this guy who murdered somebody while under the effects of this virus, and he got him off under the, it wasn't my fault, I was under the effects of this virus, blah blah blah. And anyway, the whole building ends up on quarantine, and him and Samara Weaving end up fighting their way up the whole building to get to the top to get to his boss. So there's lots of blood, lots of gore, some comedy mixed in. This was what I watched after watching A Tale of Two Sisters to clear my head. It's a fun ride. And it's pretty good. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. I definitely think that you should watch it. Like I said, I got it real high on my list, so I definitely think it's worth watching.
Nice.
it's pretty good.
Yeah, it was on my radar early on. It kind of fell off, but yeah, I'll try to add it there since you had pointed out. My number five pick, I finally finished um, George A. Romero's Dead original Dead trilogy by watching Day of the Dead, and I think it was my Letterboxd review said the dead are back again. Bring on the gore, and man, he brings the gore in this movie. The premise is it kind of feels like a. Have you seen any of the Dead movies?
Negative.
Oh my goodness. So it kind of feels where Dawn of the Dead picks off. And it's basically these scientists that are grouped together with these military types, and they have completely different ideas of like how to move forward in this post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse. The gore effects are fantastic. That is by far the highlight of the movie. A lot of people complain that it's kind of slow in the middle section of it because there's so much of this character study of like kind of going at each other about what like the future should be and what they should be doing. There's a lot of cool like experimentations on zombies and like digging into like the zombie mythos about like the fact that it's not that they need like flesh to live, it's that they have the innate desire to eat constantly. And so that's a fun commentary on American society. With the whole military presence, this being made in the 80s, maybe a little bit of a Reagan era commentary. I was there's a little bit of a fake out towards the end that I wasn't so happy about. But overall, Day of the Dead, it makes me really want to watch Dawn of the Dead again. I watched Night of the Living Dead last year. But I'm wondering which one I like better, Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead. Both really, really good zombie movies. So, yeah, I recommend you checking those out.
Nice. Well, it's nice that you picked a zombie movie. So here, I'm going to pick a zombie movie at number 4. This
Mm-hmm.
is a rewatch from me. This is going to be Planet Terror, a slightly different style of
Wow.
zombie movie.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's been a while since I've watched this, and so obviously, and I talked about I watched Death Proof earlier, so uh, this clicks all of my personal boxes. It's got all the the witty Rob Rod dialogue. Although I think this might have been written by QT, and obviously they worked on this together. So, the two movies came out together. Got Rose McGowan just being smoking hot, being a go-go dancer. She gets her leg cut off. She gets a freaking machine gun with a grenade launcher attached to it. Um, Bruce Willis, Josh Brolin, like the movie is, you have a helicopter turned vertical, chopping up zombies. Like, this movie is nuts. It's Robert Rodriguez, it's zombies, it's nuts. You got the guy from Lost in it at the beginning. Like, it's the movie is fucking bananas. Like, if you haven't seen it, you should just go and see it. If you have seen it, you should just watch it again. And this movie, the two movies together helped spawn Machete and Hobo with a Shotgun, which I haven't seen, but I need to see. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and I'm still very sad that Rob Zombie never made was it SS or Werewolves of the SS or SS Werewolves or whatever the other fake movie was that was SS Werewolf, I think is what it was. Yeah, but yeah, that's my number 4.
Nice. Well, my number 4 was I was actually trying to write. I was working on my review for it. I watched it a few nights ago. Is Audition. It's a Japanese horror film from 1999, I believe, from Takeshi. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm slaughtering this name after I just looked at it. Takeshi Miike. And let's see here. This is on the 101 movies you should see before you die list. I've heard a lot about this. I heard it gets pretty crazy at the end, and it got crazy enough to get escalated to my cringe movie bucket list. So kudos to it for that. Gosh, where do I start? So this is a fascinating little story. diving into sexual politics, and it kind of has the feel of a rom-com setting up, because it deals with the fact that this guy's like his wife has been dead for several years and he's looking to date again. And so his TV producer friend's like, oh, well, let's set up an audition for a movie. And so you can, meet all these girls firsthand, and maybe things can take off from there with one of them. And he happens to kind of key in on one girl who is kind of a victim past, and he gets attracted to that, and he picked the wrong girl. This movie gets batshit crazy at the end with the amount of torture that gets brought into the mix. My one complaint is it gets a little too full of itself with the artsy elements with dreams and stuff. At one point you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? Where did the dream start? Does that make any sense? I don't know. This is crazy. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars on the old letterbox. And I look forward to continuing to explore my thoughts as I write up my review and hopefully get it posted either tonight or in the morning. So that's Audition, Japanese horror. Check it out.
Nice. Yeah, that one's on my radar. Like we were talking about earlier. My roommate he hit the Arrow sale for October, and that was one of the ones he picked up. So hopefully we'll get around to watching that when we get the Region B Blu-ray player, either for Christmas or we get the PS3 flipped over where we can watch that. Nice. So, all right. So my number 3. This was my number 2 for most of the month until just the other day, and that is Seven by most people's account.
Fincher?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I had seen this before, but
what's in the box?
Yeah, right. What's in the box? I had not seen this since I was very young, and I probably should not have seen it when I was very young. So I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna say something. So where the fuck is Kevin Spacey's Oscar for this movie? This was well before anybody knew that he was a shitty person. Where the hell is his fucking Oscar? If Anthony Hopkins can be on screen for 10 minutes and win best actor, where the hell? Yeah, where's Kevin Spacey's Oscar? Because holy shit! Like they don't put his name in the title, like in the opening credits, nothing. Right. They just leave him off, and they put him in the credits at the end. Like holy shit! And like I feel like this is that meme. It's one of the meme things. It's like Luke's father. Darth. Darth comes out and it's Luke, I'm your father. That's the kind of the ending to this movie where it's like what's in the box and it's going to power for his head. Like, and then Brad just shoots him. Brad Pitt just shoots him. And he's like, fuck it, I don't care. Shoots him. Like this movie, like this is like one of in my opinion one of the better movies, one of the top 90s movies, like period, just point blank. So it's fucking fantastic. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it. We kind of just spoiled it for you if you haven't seen it, and I apologize. we told you ahead of time there's spoilers, so sorry. Go watch it.
If you're a movie fan and you haven't heard what's in the box, then I'm not sure why. You haven't seen Seven.
To us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in terms of Fincher, like I give a lot of credit because I kind of saw this and Fight Club probably around the same stretch of time in my middle school years, and they both had a lot of influence on my love of movies. And yeah, Seven's great. I watched it right before I got into Letterboxd, so one of these days I'll have to get right back to it. Showed it to my nephew, and he was blown away. I was such disturbing imagery there with the torture, with the deaths and the 7 deadly sins. I love religious kind of stuff like that. So yeah, Seven's great pick. My third is a rewatch from this year. So I've seen this film twice this year. Was Midsummer by Ari Aster, and I saw the director's cut. So I got to see the extra 20 minutes, which is some pretty good scenes. You get to see a little bit more Not essential to the overall film experience. You could probably just see the theatrical cut and really get the point. The thing I love so much about Midsummer is the fact that I was over in Sweden back in my college days. So I have, and my heritage is Swedish. So to be brought in, thinking about it now, Midsummer reminds me a lot of The Shining in terms of the fact that you are brought into this completely kind of strange environment and things get more and more and more like unhinged and crazy and off the demented as they go along. So you're on this roller coaster ride. Not roller coaster is a little bit extreme because it is somewhat of a slow burn, but you see these people's traditions and things slowly unravel, and you can't really unsee the big like the reason why like I was like wondering why this movie wasn't NC-17 in the middle of it with how graphic some of the violence gets. It's really a cool. I mean, I think I talked about it a few episodes ago, in probably a very minor detail. One thing I picked up the first time I watched it is a horror movie in broad daylight, and which is played off of the fact that it is in northern Sweden, or in Sweden during summertime where the days are much longer. So there's that kind of twist element there. I wouldn't say it's a real scary film. Hereditary is probably a scarier film, but I really enjoyed like how it's this folk horror kind of thing. It was everything The Wicker Man was not, in my opinion. I love Midsummer way, 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 way more than Wicker Man, and it has a fun little moment at the end. And like, why was it that way? Oh yeah, I guess so. So, yeah, recommend checking out Midsummer whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, that's one that's been on my.
It's an experience.
That's one that's on my radar. All right, so I'm gonna go with my number 2, and this actually not only is this my number 2 for the month. This is now my number 2 for the year. So, and this is a Korean horror movie. This did not give me what I expected. It completely surprised me, and I cannot say enough great things about this movie. This is I Saw the Devil. Same guy who directed A Tale of Two Sisters, which I also watched this month. So this is the best way I can describe this. This is the deadliest game of cat and mouse that I think I've ever watched in a movie. Both the two guys in this, basically once it gets going, both of them just like literally whip their dicks out on the table and like who has the biggest dick. I know that doesn't sound like a horror movie, but so you've seen Old Boy, right? So Old Boy, he is the villain, and the movie starts out, and there's a woman, and she's on the side of the snow-covered road, and she's talking on her phone to her husband, and you can see he's got the little thing in his ear, and you know, basically showing you that he's like in the Secret Service, and he's like, hey, you know, the Old Boy's like, hey, that's gonna take forever for a tow truck. And she's like, no, I'm just gonna wait, blah, blah, blah. And then he bashes her car window in, abducts her, kills her, and you can see he's got this whole kill room, blah, 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 blah. And other guy, which is girl's husband, just goes on a rampage to find this guy, and he goes through like all these other serial killers, and they just basically, I'm hard, no, I'm harder, no, I'm harder. And like I said earlier, there's a scene where he catches him, and he's in a doctor's office, and he takes a scalpel and puts it through his Achilles tendon and just rips like his whole Achilles tendon out. Like this movie is brutal, it's gory, it has great pacing, it has a great story. It's just like I finished watching it and I was like I don't even smoke cigarettes. I was like, I need a cigarette. Like this movie was like it sounds, I know it sounds more like an action movie. It is an action horror movie. It's a revenge movie. Why I love it so much. But like I can't say enough great things about this movie. Like you just need, I definitely watch it, especially if you just, it's great. Just watch it. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna give away the ending of this one, but 'cause I know it's not like a movie that most everybody will have seen. Just definitely watch it. Um, for everybody, everybody. If you haven't seen it, just watch it. It's great.
There's an idea of Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there's no real me, only an entity, something illusionary. American Psycho is my number 2 pick. It had been a long time since I'd seen this. One of my Letterboxd friends recommended it to me. And I really had to go. When I watched it, and then the next day, I clicked through it scene by scene and wrote down everything I loved about this movie to do it justice. Gosh, it blows my mind that this was written and directed by 2 women. This misogynistic screw bag of an 80s satire turned artsy slasher movie. Gosh, it's so sadistic and hilarious. And Christian Bale, my God, he's the scene where they're looking at the business cards and they're like just going on and on about these like minor differences about these basic ass white business cards, getting all bent out of shape about it. Just blows my mind. The dude's running down the hallway butt naked with his chainsaw, and he drops the chainsaw and nails the chick on the bottom of the stairway. And if you do not tell me for one instant that Christopher Nolan did not like say, Christian Bale going down a stairway and killing or beating up somebody, I think I'm going to put that in The Dark Knight. And it is in The Dark Knight. Yeah, I mean, this is the one time where I wrote all my feelings down in my Letterboxd review. Go to that, but American Psycho is fantastic, and I think I laid it out on the table there. So it's fantastic. 80s satire, slasher parody. Gosh, so much there. It's a great one.
You know, if I was wrong about Cotton Weary, then the killer's still out there. Don't go there, Sid. You're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick or something.
Scream, huh?
Scream. And
All
if
right.
you were paying attention, I said Scream 2 was at number 9. We would get to Scream 1, and here it is at number 1.
Yeah.
It was my favorite horror movie as a child. I'd say child, but like it came out when I was 11. I probably saw it at 12 or 13, or maybe I saw it at 11. I don't know, but it was my favorite then because it exploited all of the horrible tropes of the slasher movies that I disliked then. I rewatched it, and not only so, it's a satire. It makes fun of all those tropes while doing all of those tropes. And it doesn't take itself seriously. And I'm a sucker. I am an absolute sucker for references to other things within things that I like. And now, having seen so many more movies, it just references so many things. And there's so many other things that I didn't know about that I picked up on. Like, I'm probably going to watch Prom Night now because of that movie. There's another thing, like in the opening scene with Drew Barrymore, where she talks about how much she likes Halloween, and then she asks the killer what his favorite scary movie is, and he's like, oh, I really liked he's like, what's the one with the guy with the talking about Freddy Krueger, and she's like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street. He's like, yeah. And he's like, that one's really scary, and she's like, well, the first one was, but all the rest of them suck. And if my memory serves me correctly, that was a Wes Craven movie, like Scream is. But the rest of them were not. So a little dig there. And then, that one right there, Wes Craven, Wes Carpenter. There was the thing where you had the janitor in the hallway that had on the Freddy Krueger sweater, and he calls him Fred. There's just so many good references in the movie. I love it. I think it's great. And, you had, I also love very strong uh, heroine characters, and so you've got two in Sydney and Gail, um, and of course, Monica Geller being Gail, or Courtney Cox. So you got a bunch of '90s things. I was born in '85, but I'm a '90s kid. Everything that I love from the '90s. So it checks like literally every box other than revenge. Which, hell, if you want to go that route, Skeet Ulrich character, he wants revenge. He wants revenge for something stupid, but whatever. So it literally checks like every box.
Nice. Yeah, as a '90s kid, I remember when this came out on home video and really latching onto it being one of like the first slasher movies I was really got into. I should probably rewatch it, and so I can pick up on all the references you're mentioning now that I probably had no idea about. Obviously the opening phone sequence where they're talking about Friday the 13th. But yeah, the last couple of years I trick-or-treated. I was always ghost-faced until I was, unfortunately, in middle school. Some old lady's like, "Aren't you too old to be trick-or-treating?" And that kind of killed the mood. Yeah, Scream, bona fide. I remember seeing the sequel in the theater. Yeah, definitely something I need to get back to. I definitely appreciate your love for it. And my number one, I saw this pretty early on in my Halloween movie watching, and it really blew me away. I have gone on and on and on about Brian De Palma on this show, and I finally saw my favorite movie that's from Brian De Palma, and that would be Carrie. Another Stephen King adaptation. I remember in middle school I sat next to this girl who was reading Carrie, and I had heard all these references about like what happens at the end with the blood getting poured on her and stuff, and I was like, I thought I knew, but I really had no idea with Carrie. Gosh, I love how De Palma really doesn't crank out his signature styles with like the split screen and stuff until it really, really matters. I never knew like they're all gonna laugh at you line is from this movie. There's so much build up to that one moment, and whenever she finally gets the blood dumped on her, the goat's blood, it just all hell breaks loose. So much fun, and cheesy a little bit at the same time. Some great little scares toward the end. This fascinating relationship between Carrie and her like obsessive religious mother, and Sissy Spacek plays it just so brilliantly, being this awkward teenager that's dealing with this like normal teenagers, but also at the same time her crazy religious fanatic mother. Carrie, it's a bona fide classic, and I'm glad that's the number one movie I'm glad I finally saw. So Carrie.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I've seen that one. Like I saw like the '90s one. I saw the one with Chloe Grace. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the OG is still what it is. It's the OG, and it's like that one's just hard to beat. So
nice. All right, and after we're at the
this is long. This is
yeah, 2 hour 30 past the 2 hour 30-minute mark, and we are getting to our main feature, and that would be John Carpenter's bona fide 1978 American slasher classic, Halloween. Let's see, starring Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut. We had mentioned earlier where this kind of rates in our movie watching, both pretty high. The plot centers around a mental patient, Michael Myers, who is committed to a sanitarium for murdering his teenage sister on Halloween night and escapes 15 years later to wreak havoc on his hometown. All right, Joey, so you picked this out to be our main topic of discussion before you had... Was this for the first time you had ever seen it?
Well, when I went to go watch it, I had it listed down as that I had watched it.
Uh-huh.
But when I watched this movie, no, I erased it and put it in as a new watch because I had never seen this movie before. I had seen the Halloween from 2018. I watched that earlier this year. I definitely have seen Halloween H2O and probably Halloween Resurrection. And I've seen the the Rob Zombie Halloween, but I had never seen this movie. And I was literally blown away by this movie.
Nice.
So all of those things that I love that Scream makes fun of is one of the reasons I absolutely love this movie. So one of the things that I said in my review is like if Psycho is the first slasher movie, then Halloween is the personification slash perfection of the genre. Carpenter did so much well that everybody has spent the last 40 years trying to emulate him. Um, so like every slasher movie wants to be this movie, I feel. First of all, like we talked about before we started the podcast, the music. Like the music alone, holy God! Like it's I don't want to say creepy, but like it just it's creepy.
Iconic.
Like it's iconic. Yeah, like everything is about it. And
Simple.
then yeah, but it's like it sends shivers. Like you hear it and you're just like, all right, well you know what it's from.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that means. Um, and then the early trope about girls going to babysitting in horror movies. Boom, you got that. Don't have sex. Jamie Lee Curtis was the virgin. She was the nerdy virgin girl. All of her friends went had sex. Oh, what happened? They fucking died. Um,
Yeah.
so you got that trope. Um, the camera work was absolutely insane in this movie. And like there's a scene, and I was joking about it, but like so you get the scene and you see Michael Myers and you only see his shoulders, you don't see his head, and he's off to the side, and you just see Jamie Lee Curtis walking down the sidewalk, and she gets further and further away, and you just never see Michael's head or the shape's head. Um, but that's what he did like throughout the whole movie was he was always like you just had to look for him in the background, and so like I guess they call that negative space. So the use of negative space is like you just never knew where he was, and that was such a great thing. And then I was really surprised like they like she gets his mask off at the end too. Like that was very
Mm-hmm.
surprising. I was not expecting that. That just for that. She does some dumb white girl things that you do. Like she ran up the stairs at one point. But it was I was I was really just blown away by this whole movie. Like I don't know if I have anything actually legitimately negative to say about this movie. Like maybe something small here and there, but I can't really even think of anything. And I just watched the thing yesterday, so I know you've got a couple of small things to talk about.
Yeah, man.
But
As always. Yeah, I think the first time I saw this was probably in high school, and it kind of breezed by me. Didn't really lay much of an impact. I remember my ex brother-in-law had a CD full of like all like the top like horror movie villain like theme songs, and that was kind of the first time I had ever heard that John Carpenter theme, and that definitely left an impression. So yeah, it was great seeing this in HD for the first time. I thought that was significantly better than like the old VHS I watched it on originally. I really in watching more and more and more horror and more art films, I definitely appreciate more of the style that Carpenter really showcased in this film. The scene, especially in the beginning, where it's all a POV of Michael's perspective, slowly creeping up to his sister, being behind that mask, hearing that breathing, slowly really embodies this idea of this soulless killer, and how he just on a dead set mission to get to her and kill her, and there's nothing wavering about him. So I thought that was really, really effective. Love, love, love the music. You already talked about it. One thing I didn't remember was the music actually changes a little bit towards the end. I think it's just like one solid note at some points when he's going after Jamie Lee Curtis. So definitely thought that was a cool change. And there's a few moments where it kind of goes into more of a ballady kind of feel. So yeah, John Carpenter, just a master composer, made some of the best themes like of all time. Okay. The stalking aspect, I definitely liked it throughout the first half of the film. Um, let's see here. It gets dropped a couple times in the dialogue where the characters are talking like about the boogeyman, and this whole idea of like Michael Myers really embodies this idea of this ominous boogeyman figure that's also kind of mixed with this slasher killer. So kind of like the realistic, but also the what's the word, supernatural. In a lot of ways, Michael Myers is. I don't mind him not having a lot of character. I think it kind of adds to the fact that he's this cold-hearted killer that you really know nothing about. I know a lot of people have a lot to say about the zombie movies in terms of really kind of trying to develop who Michael is as a character, which I probably need to revisit eventually to kind of grasp hold of a little bit more. I'm not sure if you've seen It Follows, but the scenes of like Michael slowly kind of like creeping towards the teens, like early on, reminding me a lot of It Follows. That movie definitely borrowed from that feel. The movie has a great atmosphere in terms of really setting the stage for this being a Halloween night kind of deal. Did you want to say anything?
I definitely have seen it. It Follows. I thought that was a good movie, and that's a good pickup. I didn't catch on. Um, I had something I was going to say a second ago. Holy shit. Oh yeah. So a lot of people. I was going to say I agree with you. A lot of people on the zombie films, they don't like that they gave all of this backstory to Michael, and they took away that he's this silent killer that has no like part of the mystique and the scary factor is he doesn't say anything, you don't know anything about him. He killed his sister. 15 years later, he escapes and he's coming after Jamie Lee Curtis, and you don't know why. He's just trying to kill her. He kills these other people, and he digs up the grave, the headstone, puts it in the bed. And, Judith Myers, and he's coming for her, and that's all it is. And I think in dialogue, the doctor man he repeatedly says he's a force of nature. He's a force of nature. That gives that extra mystique that he's more than just a man, or is he? And you don't really know because he's just a dude in a suit. You assume he can just be killed. She stabs him, and it's not necessarily a mortal wound, but she just stabs him, and he keeps coming, and it's just really horrifying, place that you're in because she's trying to protect the children, and then she's kind of this tiny girl against this man he just keeps coming, and you don't have any idea why. He never says anything. He just, oh, here's Jamie Lee Curtis. Here he comes.
Yeah.
So
one of the fun observations I picked up on is the movie they're watching, as they're kind of hunkering down for Halloween night, is The Thing, which, at least in my opinion, John Carpenter's remake of The Thing that he came out with a couple years later is his bona fide masterpiece. So kind of shows that he had already had his sights set on that, and so that's pretty cool tie-in,
yeah.
the fact that he includes that in this movie.
Because it's the Thing from Outer Space, right, is actually the title of the original. It's like The Thing from Outer Space, I think.
A Thing from Another World, perhaps. I've never seen it. I think it's a 50s film.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think Howard Hawks, I believe, he's a pretty well-known director, but people do cite The Thing as like one of the best remakes. Maybe we'll talk about that in more detail one day. There was some stuff I didn't care for. My mind kind of did drift in a few locations. I really wasn't into the Loomis character this time around. There was a part towards the beginning where like they're driving to the insane asylum, and it seemed like they were just endlessly like talking and driving through darkness. And I was like, all right, get on with it. And then they show up, and Michael's escaped, and he has to go to the town. These are very minor complaints. I gave this 4.5 stars. Just some minor complaints here. Let's see here. And then after like he escapes from the hospital, Loomis just kind of like hangs around the old Myers house, is like telling the cop, oh, he's, this force of nature, you need to be on your guard. And then, he conveniently shows up at the end to shoot him. And that's Loomis for you. And then I'm not sure why, but like whenever Michael Myers is like dispatching of all like these teens that are having sex or whatever, I was a little underwhelmed with all their deaths. Like some of them are a little silly, and I don't know, I just really wasn't getting into it that much. But I tell you, whenever Jamie Lee Curtis is the target, that's when shit gets real, and that's when shit gets really intense, and when I was really getting really sucked into it. That scene of her in the closet is just, it brings chills to me thinking about it now. It's so, I don't want to say iconic because I didn't know about it ahead of time, but it is definitely like one of the best parts of the movie, with him like hammering into the closet and seeing that light, and her huddled down there, praying for, to survive. I love how the body disappears like at the very end and it goes straight to credits. That's just a perfect way to wrap up with this like mysterious, like what happened to him, just like the boogeyman, like I had mentioned earlier. I love how the opening of the movie is so simple, with it just saying the Halloween letters, and then it's zooming up on this very simple pumpkin, this idea of Halloween, very traditional thing there. Let's see. I think overall, when I started writing about this movie, what I appreciated is the fact that this movie takes place at a time that you would actually be watching this movie. So it's a little meta in a way. This is the kind of movie after Halloween is like all said and done, and it's dark and you're hunkered in and you're watching a movie on Halloween night. This is the kind of movie you watch, and it's about you watching this movie, and I really appreciate that aspect of it, and that's what makes it shine a little bit brighter in my eye. Throw it over to you if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, so I thought it was really slick what she tried to do, being Jamie Lee Curtis. So she runs up the stairs, which, okay, stupid white girl in a horror movie thing, but she runs up the stairs and she opens the door to the balcony to make it look like, she went over the balcony before she hides in the closet. I thought that was really slick. Like, I kind of hated that they didn't really do anything with that. But then, she tries to hide, she tries to, like, lock the door with the, with whatever she ties it with. And I guess it's, kind of gave her away that she was in there. But, that scene is just very horrifying. And I really, in most movies I really would have probably hated this, but there's this scene where, Loomis walks up to the sheriff for the first time and he's talking to her, and he's like, hey, dude's coming, Michael Myers is coming. And then Michael Myers just drives, he's got his back turned and just drives past him. And it's like, oh, that's, it's so good. They just miss each other by like, 10 feet. There's just lots of like little, little things that they did here and there that I really, really enjoyed. He took 6 bullets, but did he take all 6 of them? Like, we don't really know. And then he falls out, and then like you said, he turns around and he's gone. And we go back to where we go to Scream, and it's like, you shoot them a whole bunch of times and they're not dead, and oh, look, there's another trope. You got to shoot them in the head, or put their head through a wood chipper, or whatever it is you got to do to kill them. And that's where it's like, maybe he really is mystical and more than just a man. Maybe he really is the boogeyman. I like the scene where he kills the girl in the car. Like, she forgot her keys. She the door's locked. She goes to get her keys, and she opens the door immediately, and it's like, you stupid wench, the car was locked, you didn't unlock it. Oh, and there's fog inside the window, someone's breathing in there. Like, you're so stupid. And then, she gets choked out and then gets her throat slashed. And there was the one scene where he stabs the guy and the dude's like hung up against the wall, but like the knife's not deep enough in him to like hold him against the wall. And I thought that was like maybe my one kind of like like issue of like, the knife's not deep enough to be holding him in the wall. I was like, there's not a hook. There's not like a hook. Too. Like, there's not a hook there that I know of. But okay, sure, whatever. his sheer will's holding him there or something, whatever. But you know, it's this just it was great. You know, it was nice and dark, and you know, you had jack o' lanterns, and the kids went out trick or treating. And like you said, yes, this is the movie after Halloween you would go and watch it, and the kids had went out trick or treating and were watching a horror movie, and so yeah, it's meta in its own right. So it was very very enjoyable and had a lot of good things besides being enjoyable. It just had a lot of good technical stuff in it too. You see why John Carpenter is considered a master in his craft.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there was a couple slashes before it, but yeah, like you'd said earlier, Halloween is definitely the landmark in the genre. It spawned sequels, imitators like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, but yeah, this will always be this, and Texas Chainsaw definitely came before those two. So, yeah, the 4 big ones there.
Yeah.
All right. We have been talking about a lot of horror movies, huh?
We have. This is going to be our big boy episode.
Yeah. It was intimidating looking at what we had 50 some movies to talk about. Well, we did it, and it was a good time. All right. So, thanks so much, everyone that's following the show. And as always, if you want to join the club, make sure to hit subscribe. And in our next episode, we'll be coming up sometime early next month. We'll be talking about Munich. And the challenge movie for that episode is
T2.
Yeah, that's right. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Perfect. Especially with Dark Fate on the horizon. Hopefully I'll see that. Maybe we'll see that before the next episode. And if you have any questions for us, we'd love to chat about those and get your name out there. And just send an email. And what's that address, Joey?
It's the Average Joe's Movie Clubcast at gmail.com.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Happy movie watching. Boo.
Later.